Yeah, somebody did.
Mr. Mayor, this is the program fee. That's what's going out over there. That's the one when you see the wide shot.
I still like saying, Joel, where are we?
I love that.
Doing a $6.5 to $7 million library.
Thank you.
I'd like to call to order our work session for June the 17th. Let me please remind y'all that if you have a cell phone or other device, to silence it so that it doesn't go off during our meeting. Our first order of business is some presentations. And before we get started with the formal presentations that we have, we happened to get up early this morning and read a newspaper article on the sports page, and fortunately, it wasn't one of our employees, but it was the husband and daughter of one of our employees who was featured in the Tampa Bay Times sports section today. So Joelle, instead of fining you $1 since you didn't get your name in the paper, we're going to let everybody know about your daughter Ada and what a champion she is in running, and Tommy, who is there. But that's on the front page of the Tampa Bay Times sports section today. So, congratulations to you. And now, I also want to introduce and recognize from Clearwater High School our Leadership Academy students who are here with us this morning. If y'all would stand up and let us wave, and thank y'all for participating in local government and knowing that all politics is local, and if it gets done at the local government best. And we've got a great... Y'all got a great school, and it's in a great city. So thank y'all for being here. Now to our official order of business, I'd like to call forward Jennifer Moulton from our finance department, who has been working for the city for 5 years. Jennifer.
Congratulations. Thank you. Good job.
Watch your step. Watch your step. And a second time, I'd like to call for the first time, but the second 5-year employee today, Kyle Brotherton from our Planning and Development Department. Kyle.
Good job.
There you go. You forgot your bow tie again.
I did forget my bow tie.
Jeez.
Hey, Kyle.
And our employee of the month for May is Matt Jackson from our Parks and Recreation Department. Mr. Jackson. We need to know why you were recognized.
That's right.
Stand up close where you're full. Yeah, there we go.
He laid his wrist.
Matt Jackson, Recreation Supervisor 2. Matt consistently goes above and beyond his duties as supervisor of the North Greenwood Recreation Complex and embodies our vision of outstanding Gold Star customer service. Below is an email sent by one of his customers recognizing his service. On behalf of myself and the ever-growing number of pickleball players who choose to play at the North Greenwood Recreation Center, I wish to extend our appreciation to Matt Jackson and his support staff for going beyond the norm in order to coordinate alternate playing locations while the roof repairs were undertaken at North Greenwood Recreation Center. Matt literally jumped into action once he realized the need to increase playing times at the other Clearwater recreation sites. Within a couple of days, such arrangements were made and professionally communicated to all involved. I personally witnessed Matt on the phone negotiating with other supervisors at the other recreation centers in order to minimize interruption to play. Then to top things off, when over 30 players showed up this morning, Matt had made arrangements for coffee and donuts as a welcome back greeting. Who does that? I tell you who, Matt Jackson. He didn't need to because we were happy to be back. This was the icing on the cake, and I say well done. Hats off to Matt. Please share this very positive feedback with Matt. Although I cite this particular situation, it is my observation that Matt Jackson runs a very professional operation at North Greenwood Center. Sincerely yours, George Ballantyne, North Greenwood Pickleball alumni. This is just one example of the daily commitment Matt has to providing outstanding customer service to our citizens and visitors. We are proud to have Matt as part of the Parks and Recreation family. Matt's been recognized as May 2019 Employee of the Month.
Good job, Matt. Matt, thank you. Good to see you again. Good job. Don't want to hurt you.
And our bi-monthly team award for May-June 2019 goes to the City Hall Move Crew, Zane King, Andrew Bassett, Jamie Cuervo, and Kyle Gaines. Gentlemen.
Beginning long before the scheduled move date for City Hall, January 18th, 2019, the building and maintenance crew of Zane King, Andrew Bassett, Jamie Cuervo, and Kyle Gaines kicked into high gear. They were there to assist with whatever was needed to prepare for the move. They went way above and beyond to get the job done, and always with a great attitude. It was a very stressful time for city staff and Clearwater citizens, but the building and maintenance team rolled with the punches. Whiteboards had to be removed and rehung. TVs had to be taken down and rehung. Furniture disassembled, moved, and reassembled. Pictures to be hung and rehung. Hundreds of boxes to be moved, to name just a few things they did. They were being pulled back and forth from department to department with conflicting requests, all of which were top priority, but always handled all the demands of all departments in City Hall in a professional, patient, courteous, and skillful manner. They even gave some excellent interior decorating advice. This team worked many overtime hours, including weekends, and they should be recognized for their hard work, dedication, professionalism, patience, and great attitude. They are deserving of this recognition. Let's give kudos to the building and maintenance team from the entire City Hall staff. Thank you. This is the City Hall Move Crew, May, June 2019, bi-monthly team winners.
No small taps.
We're going to give you all a chance to move us back to when you think second time.
No small feet.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, good job. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Very good job. Thank you very much. Thanks.
I'd like to recess our work session and call to order our pension trustees meeting for June the 17th. Are there any addition or corrections to the minutes?
Move to approve. Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the minutes of May the 13th. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries unanimously. Anybody from the public wishing to speak to an item that is not on the agenda of the pension trustees? If so, please come forward at this time. Otherwise, we'll move forward to agenda item 4.1.
Good morning. Request to approve the new hires for acceptance into the pension plan as listed.
Any questions of staff on agenda item 4.1?
Move it.
Anybody from the public to speak to agenda item 4.1? Motion?
Motion to approve agenda item 4.1.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve agenda item 4.1. Comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries unanimously. Agenda item 4.2.
Request for approval of the following employees to vest their pension as provided by Section 2.419 of the Employees Pension Plan.
Any questions on agenda item 4.2? Anybody from the public to speak to agenda item 4.2?
Move approval of agenda item 4.2.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve agenda item 4.2. Comments, council? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries unanimously. Agenda item 4.3.
Request for approval of the following employees' request of employees for a regular pension as provided by Sections 2.416 and 2.424 of the Employees Pension Plan.
Any questions of staff on agenda item 4.3? Anybody from the public to speak to agenda item 4.3?
Move to approve agenda item 4.3.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve agenda item 4.3. Comments, council? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries unanimously. Ms. Poirier, do you have any other business for the pension trustees?
I do not, thank you.
Okay, with that, we will adjourn the pension trustees meeting and reconvene our work session for June the 17th. Agenda item 3.1. Mr. Horn.
Amend the city's fiscal year 2018-2019 operating and capital improvement budget mid-year and pass the appropriate ordinances on first reading. Ms. Casper.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Kayleen Castle, Budget Manager. This is the mid-year budget review for the fiscal year 2018-19 budget. This report reflects 6 months of activity, October through March, and also includes council action to date. In the general fund, revenues and expenditures are increased by $2,051,756. This general fund increase is primarily related to council-approved appropriations of general fund reserves, which total $2,051,390. This includes an increase to the police department of $226,390 to fund this year's increase for the FOP and FOP supervisor's contract, and $1,825,000 to fund the purchase of the former North Ward Elementary School property. Other general fund amendments include an increase of $336 in engineering for receipt of the quarterly safety award, which is funded with revenues from the Central Insurance Fund, and a $30 increase in employee recognition in the Parks and Recreation Department, which is offset by a donation that was received. Adjusted for all items listed in this report, general fund reserves are approximately $25.7 million or 17.4% of the current year's general fund budget, which exceeds our minimum reserve requirement by $13.2 million at mid-year. Expenditure amendments in the gas fund reflect an increase of $1,963,547. Significant amendments include increases to overtime, which total $251,600, a net increase of $1,020,403 to various operating accounts, primarily inventory for resale, utilities, and operating supplies, an increase of $17,000 for building and maintenance charges, and an increase of $674,544 to transfers for the increased gas dividend payment to the general fund. All of these amendments to gas fund expenditures are offset by revenue amendments. In the capital improvement program, an increase of $375,145 is reflected at mid-year. Amendments include an increase of $417,368 in county fire tax revenues for the Countryside Fire Station project, increases which total $221,024, representing transfers between capital funds in the miscellaneous public art and the beach guard facility maintenance project due to the accounting system conversion. and decreases which total $255,602 of lease purchase proceeds in the gas vehicle additions, police vehicles, and articulating boom lift projects. And finally, in the special program fund, an increase of $1,673,102 is reflected at mid-year. This includes a transfer of $200,000 in general fund revenues to provide additional funding needed to support the special events program, the recognition of $6,435 in governmental revenues supporting police programs for investigative cost recovery, $129,764 in FEMA reimbursements for Hurricane Irma, $33,892 in donation revenues to support police, parks, and library programs, $17,000 in receipts from foreclosure registry fees collected this quarter, $540,057 in revenues for special events received over the last quarter, $328,810 in fines and court proceeds to support the lien foreclosure program, public safety programs, and the tree replacement program, and $417,143 in contractual service revenue for police extra duty. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Any questions for staff on agenda item 3.1? Mr. Poglace?
No, I didn't.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I just,
Talk to us about the reserves, because does that include the BP money in there?
Not anymore. We transferred that out at the beginning of the year for the Crest Lake Park program.
Okay. But that seems like an awful, I thought we were closer to our minimum on the reserves.
We were, but you increased the millage rate this year.
Okay,
So-
so that helped
That's it.
offset?
Yes.
Okay. But then that's playing out over several years, right? The
Yes.
intent?
But there's amount of extra revenues in the current year that help build that, and also the close of the 18 books. Jay's here. The close of fiscal year 18 was, had a positive result.
Jay Ravens, Finance Director. The millage increase, per the 10-year schedule, creates a surplus in the early years, such as now, that then will be used up in the latter years as expenses increase faster than revenues are projected.
Okay. Any other questions, council? This will be on our agenda then for
Yes.
Thursday night. Great. Agenda item 4.1.
Clearwater Gas fiscal system gas fiscal year 18-19 dividend to the city general fund report and request transfer back of $60,264 to the Clearwater Gas System Operating Fund to reimburse for repairs to the old Countryside Library roof and air conditioning. Mr. Warrington.
Thank you very much. Chuck Warrington, Managing Director of the Clearwater Gas Systems. It's my pleasure every year to come to you and report on how we did in the previous year, particularly as it reflects on how it affects the dividend. We have a policy of the city to transfer a minimum of $1.7 million a year to as a dividend since the city owns us. And I'm happy to tell you that we actually came in last year, finished the year at $1.5 million more than that. And so the dividend this year will be $3.2 million in total, and that was just reflected. That was one of the items that was mentioned in the budget. You need to know, though, that the finance director is aggressive, and each year, even though he knows 1.7 is the requirement, he ponies up a little bit more that he thinks we're really going to do. So he actually budgeted for 2.5 million. So you already had that planned in the budget, and so it ends up being about 700,000 more than it was in the budget. This is a picture of how that's looked over the duration of my term with the city. When I came here, we were about $200,000 a year, and so it's grown to $3.2 million this year. So you can see it's a pretty steady progression. We did, as the city manager said, we incurred a couple of expenses that were kind of outside our realm. We happened to be at the using the Countryside Library old building, and it needed a roof repair, and it needed a couple of air conditioners, and there was nowhere else to fund that during the time, so we funded it up front, and we talked to city administration about recouping that as part of this expense, and because it really isn't a gas expense, it's really for the benefit of the city as a whole. Because even after we move out of there, I think the plan is eventually for the police to move into that building while they're remodeling the police station out in that same area. So so we're asking for about a $60,000 refund for those two items, which means that you're still getting a net increase in the dividend above the budget of $645,000. This is a picture of all the ways we transfer funds to the city. We do, in addition to the dividend, we have an administrative transfer for all the things we use city services. We also have a city services for the areas where we get charged directly for services like the fleet and the utility customer service. We have a franchise, we have a utility tax, and some slight other contributions. All total this year, that'll be about $9.9 million in transfer payments to the city. And again, here's a history of that. We were transferring about $2.5 million 20 years ago, and now we're transferring about $10 million a year to the city. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any other questions you have.
Any questions of staff on Mr. Kunda?
Were the air conditioners that you put in the old library gas?
No, they were just replacements of the conventional electric units. That the library is set up for that. It would have cost a lot more money if we'd had to reset it for gas ones. But we are putting gas air conditioners in the new buildings that we're building.
Any other questions, Council? Mr. Warrington, can you go back to your gas transfer payments to the city slide?
Mm-hmm.
You have the chart with A, B, C, D, E, and F, but it's sort of hard to tell what colors correspond. Could you just tell us which number corresponds with what letter?
Sure. The purple is the dividend payment. Yeah, in fact, it's good. Next year when I do this, I'll put A, B, C, D with the numbers too. That'll be even better. The maroon at the bottom is the administrative transfer payment. The green on the left side is the city services payments for things like the fleet and utility customer service. The yellow is the franchise, and the blue is the utility tax, and then there's a very slight sliver, that $20,000 for other things where we transfer money.
Okay, thank you.
So I'll make that improvement for next year.
Only because for people on,
Sure.
Who are watching on TV, it may be hard
It's a little harder
to
to see the
distinguish.
colors.
Yeah. Consent?
Yes.
Agenda item 4.2.
Award a contract purchase order to Workscapes, Inc. in the amount of $433,150 for the purchase of furniture and cabinetry for the new Clearwater gas system administrative and operations building, and authorize the appropriate officials to execute such.
Good morning, Brian Langill, Assistant Director for Clearwater Gas System. This is the furniture that we want to purchase for our new building. It's the new gas system operations and administrative building, the big building that's being constructed right now. That's expected to be done later this year. Workscapes was selected under a state contract for doing the work of purchasing the furniture. It's for 37 individual staff offices. We also have 8 areas that will have cubicle areas for multiple employees that will work within those spaces. We also have 3 break rooms, 1 on each floor of the new facility, and 4 meeting conference rooms. So that's all the chairs and tables, all the equipment that's needed for those rooms as well. And also we have 4 printer file storage areas for our records and printing. And we have also 2 training rooms that we will have in the new facility, and 2 outside event spaces, 1 on the 3rd level and 1 on the 1st level on the outside on the south end of the facility. And in addition to that, we have 1 all-employee big assembly room for all of our employee meetings and large training areas as well for that.
Any questions of staff on agenda item 4.2? Consent?
Yes.
Great. For our students, so you'll understand, this is a work session, so we don't really vote on anything. We just go through what the agenda will be for Thursday night. When we say consent, that's to put it on the agenda so that unless somebody at the last minute decides to pull it, all of the items that are on the, what's called the consent agenda will be approved with one motion. It helps speed things up a little bit. The first meeting that we had was pension trustees, and that was actually a formal meeting. During a work session, nobody from the public is allowed to speak. It's just the opportunity for council to be able to ask questions and get an understanding of what staff has prepared for the agenda for Thursday night. Then at the Thursday night meeting is when the public would be able to speak on an agenda item. So 4.2 will go on consent.
Okay, thank you.
5.1, Mr. Horn.
Approve a one-year legal services agreement in an amount not to exceed $15,000 with Thomas Gonzalez of Gray Robinson to review and revise several employment-related documents and related code of ordinance sections and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same. Ms. Poirier.
Good morning, Jennifer Poirier, Human Resources Director. As you are aware, we have recently undergone a comprehensive classification and compensation study for the city. And as a result, what has been proposed to be implemented as of 10/1 is a complete overhaul of our pay plan. And currently, our pay plan is linked to several of our city policies, such as our SAMP manual, our performance-based performance manual, our civil service rules, and our employment agreement letters. So all of those things are going to need to be updated to be in conjunction and in cohesiveness with our new proposed pay plan. So we are requesting that we use outside legal counsel to assist us with getting that done in an expedient manner so that we can have those policies hopefully all updated by or prior to the 10/1 effective date. So that's the item that you have before you this morning, is to go into a contract with Tom Gonzalez. He is now with Gray Robinson. He has worked with the city on several other matters, so he's familiar with all of our policies, and we think that he could do it in a quick and professional manner. There are funds available in the Human Resources Professional Services Cost Code to cover this expense.
Questions?
So this
Mr.
is
Albrecht.
for getting it done before the next fiscal year.
Correct, because we're gonna, our pay plan is going into effect on 10/1,
Yeah.
and so we want to have all of our policies updated to be cohesive with this for a 10/1 effective date.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Will employees have input, with him, or is,
No, the HR staff will be going back and forth to make sure that he has all the documents and stuff, but the purpose of this is to have a legal review to make sure that we're in compliance.
okay, gotcha. Consent?
Yes.
6.1.
Approve the request from the owner of property address 19337 US Highway 19, who is the applicant, to vacate a blanket utility easement as recorded in Official Records Book 5138, page 489 of the Public Records of Pinellas County, Florida, and pass the appropriate ordinance on first reading. Mr. Bozak.
Morning, Robert Berzak, Real Estate Coordinator. The property owner requested that the city vacate a blanket utility easement previously granted to the city on the applicant's property. As a condition of the vacation, the applicant will grant a defined replacement utility easement to the city. City stakeholders have reviewed the vacation request and have no objection. Questions?
Any questions on 6.1? No. This will be on our agenda then for Thursday night. Council, I just did a quick review. Our students are only going to be with us, for a half hour? 45 minutes. Can we change, this is sort of boring for you, all right? Yeah, tell us. We'll continue if you want. Is this sort of boring for you? Okay, I was going to switch to Imagine Clearwater so that y'all could have, hear some things going on. Why don't we just go ahead and do that? If that's okay with council, just to start a discussion on.
I'm excited to hear about it.
Yeah, I'm excited too.
I'd rather switch from the
Okay,
boring stuff.
okay. Pardon? Yeah, we're going to go to Imagine Clearwater. All these, what we're skipping over so that y'all can understand is, it's just ordinances to annex properties into the city of Clearwater for the most part. And, I mean, we're excited to have that because that builds our tax rolls, but y'all will probably enjoy, hearing a little bit about Imagine Clearwater.
Their park,
Park, yeah,
their park,
their neighborhood.
yeah.
Mr. Delk.
Mayor, Council, Michael Delk, Interim Assistant City Manager. Want to cover 4 items with you today. So we're going to go over the library enhancement project. I think this is the first time that you have seen this, this presentation. We want to talk very briefly about the Memorial Causeway, give you an update on that, some of the reuse scenarios that we've been working on or what we're preparing to request for that item, and then the park phasing. So if I may, we're going to start off with the library enhancement project. The work on this project concluded last year. The library had a stakeholder committee and the library board, of course, to assist them in this project. A couple of things before I introduce Mr. Williamson to come up and go through the project with you that I think is particularly notable, that I would encourage you to pay close attention to as we go through this, is that the proposed changes really connect the library directly to Osceola Street. In addition to that, it really it connects it as well to the Imagine Clearwater, which is a project obviously that we're working on implementing sooner rather than later, and the boardwalk, the library, and the orientation will become more of a integrated whole. So I think there's some really positive changes to the proposed library enhancement program. And with that, I would like to introduce Mr. Ted Williamson from Williamson Dakar to come up and go through that project with you.
Thank you, City Council members. My name is Ted Williamson, President of Williamson Dakar Associates. And I'd just like to go through the work we did with the City of Clearwater, the library staff, and the different stakeholders for the library. To start out, this project was brought to us to really, how can we integrate the library, which is an essential part of the city here, with Imagine Clearwater, with both of those elements going on. And so we worked with a lot of the stakeholders. Part of this project was actually to meet with, the Friends of the Library, the foundation, the advisory board, the library staff, as well as the city leadership, to really go through, what are the challenges with the library? How does that want to be integrated with Imagine Clearwater to really bring those synergies? Because you got a great facility there, and really with everything you're doing there, how can it work better together? And so some of the key things as far as when we met with all the different stakeholders, these were some of the main topics, and it's things for you to be aware of, and you may also be aware of a lot of these already. Is one of the keys is when Coachman Park has activities going on, it limits access to the library, and so that's something that when you're considering what's going on, how are you able to maintain the library operation when there's large events down there at the Coachman Park? The next item is the rooftop terrace. I don't know if any of you have really been up on that terrace. And originally when they built the library, it was something they utilized as much as they could for functions. But over time, they realized that because there's no rooftop, there's nothing shielding it from the wind, that whenever you had an event try to reserve up there, you always had to reserve this room down here because of weather and inclement and things going on. You really couldn't count on it being used. And so over the years, it's kind of got away from being used. The library still uses it for some of your programs.
Programming.
From programming and stuff like that, but again, it's very dependent on the weather, as well as with no roof. This time of the year during the summer, you have a lot of sun, and it's very hot up there. And then the access to there is only through the library, so it really can't have off. If it's used off hours, someone has to be in the library to allow people up and secure the library. Another item is here in the library is the cafe area out here. It's really underutilized. It's a large space, and it's really an underutilized piece of the library. So we took a look at that. And then, this meeting room, which is, now the council chambers, the meeting room, was really only accessed through the library. You didn't have a lot of public access to it, so off hours were, a challenge. The other nice thing is here you have the library is this art gallery along the corridor here. You have a lot of beautiful, you bring in a lot of beautiful stuff from the community, but it's really out of the way. That's one of the problems is every time we've been here, you see a lot of nice stuff, but it's out of the way. So how can we, enhance that? Your cafe has limited hours, and then the function of the library, the front lobby and the space, there's a lot of underutilized space the way it's kind of laid out. Libraries have changed. Since this library was built 25 years ago, libraries have changed how they operate, how they use, and so those are things to look at, as well as, needing more collaboration in meeting groups. So those are some of the key things. And then the stakeholders of priorities were connecting the cafe to the exterior, so that can be used, especially with, the walk, that's going to be along the library. To have the library have more of a museum, a draw, where people would come here. There's a destination, to this. Attracting exhibits to the library would be a great thing, and make it a destination, here to come down here. And to promote programs, one of the things, and internally with the library is the signage and how to move around in the library. And one of the key things obviously is parking. With everything going on down here, how are you going to provide parking? And one of the keys obviously is for families bringing their children down here, as well as seniors. Those are really the two main ones. Is, want to make sure that they have access to parking. I think everyone's pretty familiar with the existing, the site and the library, and this is the way it kind of exists right now, just as far as our first shot of that. And now, taking a look at this is not the updated. I'm not quite sure what the updated plan is as far as a whole. Imagine Clearwater, but this is a plan that we are initially working with. And one of the really key things is the bluff walk, and that's going along and continuing along and kind of ending at the library. So how can the library be energized with that, as well as along Osceola? The future improvements are desired along Osceola as far as bringing more young professionals downtown and having more living downtown. And so those are some of the things we looked at, as far as a site. When we were looking at the library, one of the key things that they have some challenges right now is, outside on the west side, where you have the vegetation, you have the walls. I think everyone, when you go by there now, you see the fencing. And so you kind of have this security, which kind of limits access and visibility, from the library down to the waterfront. They also have a problem with, individuals in the, trying to sleep in the bushes and having things like that at night. And so, those are some of the challenges we looked at, is how to access that, as well as how to access Imagine Clearwater. And I don't know, is there a, okay. And so, what we're showing here is really opening this area up here to more a green space. So it's very open, up to the library. And when you're inside the library, you can see out, and you can see the beautiful view that you have down to Coachman Park, at that first level it's access. And then the next thing is over here where you have the plaza is taking down the walls and the fences and actually making it interactive, because this is at the end of the bluff walk. And so making that kind of a hub point there, for the end of the walk. And then updating, the access along Osceola to really match, what the city wants to do there along the future. And one of the key things is really moving the entry. We moved the entry to the library to the southwest corner, so it's really there to interact with Imagine Clearwater and really have that access off that. So that's really the key things as far as a site. And then looking at the inside of the library, I think I'll go over these as far as, when the next thing is the plan, is really, how to change the inside of the library. And so by we moved the entry down to the southwest corner here. And now one of the challenges when you come in the library, you actually have to go all the way to the north side to go vertically on the stairs. And so what we're proposing is to put a new set of stairs right next to the entry here that can go up to the third floor, so that you don't have everyone wandering all the way through the library, but you can go up, you can take your children up to the second level, you can go up to the third level studying, so having that vertical circulation right there at the entry to be able to move up and down. And then making this first floor of the library, reducing the library shelving, to a lower height, providing seating, along the exterior wall here, so you have more seating and access, to the views out there. And then along this side is really developing collaboration space. One of the keys is having the young professionals be able to use a space. When you have individuals that are entrepreneurs and need space to maybe meet somebody, that they can use this space and come in here and work, as well as meeting different individuals for business, for them to develop their businesses. And then on this corner here, really taking this and making this kind of a multi-use space that would really be your gallery. So that if you want to bring in, the local exhibits for a week or two, or you want to bring in traveling exhibits, or it could be a function space too. So it's a multi-use space. It's really, as people walk by the library, they see that. They see what's going on, and they're energized to come in there. And then some of the other things, as far as taking this multi-purpose room and expanding it and having the lobby access off Osceola, so that way this could be utilized, on separate hours, off hours, when the library is not operational, as well as they can have a connection with this cafe, because we're actually, putting a wall along the north side of the library, and so you could actually have the multi-purpose cafe and extend out to the outside area if you wanted to have a function where the library is closed, but you could still use all these facilities. And so those are the major changes on the first floor. And then when you go up to the second floor, as you can see, we just have on the south side the new stair, which would be going up, and that would be actually outside of the existing wall right now. So we're not like demolishing inside the building. You're actually able to take that space and just build up right there and go through there. And then I'll go back one page. One thing also, when we look at the upper level, we have a lobby here with an elevator that actually takes you up to the rooftop if we want to go ahead and enhance the rooftop. So you have that separate entry that you don't have to go into the library to be able to go up to the rooftop terrace and use that. And you can see that this elevator just goes through then the floor at the second level. And then at the third level, we have the stair coming up into the reading area as well as the elevator. And there's not really much on the fourth floor other than our access up to the rooftop. Now, the key is when we talk to everybody is a rooftop is what to do with a rooftop. Right now, it's $1 million view. I'm sure you've been up there. It's $1 million view with the city, but again, it's not very usable. And so being able to enclose it so that you can use it all the time, depending on the weather, but you want to also be able to open it up too. And so some of the keys would be, doing a lot of glass areas, which could open up. So if you're having an event up there and the weather permits, you could enjoy that view and be able to go out there and really enjoy, the exterior. Right now, there's no restrooms up there. So if you're actually using that space, you have to go down, to the lower levels to use a restroom. And then if you're catering events, there's no catering kitchen. So you'd want an area where the caterers could come in and provide a warming kitchen for that space. And so when this got transitioned to the PowerPoint, it kind of got spread apart. So this view is a little exaggerated here. But really, this is the existing area of the rooftop area. As you can see, it's right here. And so what we're proposing is to adding on this other section here, and to increase this area as well as to put all your support services, which would be the elevator, the stair, restrooms, a service area. And we've worked with Michael McCarthy. He's a structural engineer, which I think a lot of you probably know. He did the original structural design for this library, and so we worked closely with him, and he evaluated everything. And then part of our budgeting is what it would cost to enhance this. But the structure can take this. It's just a matter of doing some additions to there. And so it's really enhancing this. And then on the other side, where you have a service elevator coming up here, this could be the catering kitchen to be able to bring up all your food for catering events. And so what this really does is provide you a flexible area for events, such as maybe it's the Rotary Club, maybe it's a Chamber of Commerce, or again, events for weddings, receptions and all that kind of thing. So it can be used that way as well as far as for civic events. And then we did some imaging, and this would be, again, when you're coming up the bluff walk, the new entry to the library that's moved over towards the west side. So when you're coming along there, you see it sticks out. So you do see it from Osceola, so it's not hidden from Osceola, but it's really along that bluff walk to get people to come in and then go out and enjoy the beautiful area to the west of the library. Then this would be along Osceola, where we have a new lobby here, which would actually, then you can come in there and take you up to the rooftop level, which would be the terrace. And so again, you can get up and down from there without having to go through the library. And then one of the key things we had as far as along the west side of the library was opening it up. So safety and security, that's one of the key things around the library, especially to the west, is the security along there. So really opening that up, whatever happens along the bluff walk, this is kind of what I think we had in one of the last versions we were working with. I'm not quite sure what's going along there now, but it would be tied in and work with whatever is along the bluff walk. And having the open plaza. Now, one of the things that we've shown out here that was discussed is having a restaurant. Over here. This is something that's not initially in the plans because I think it goes past the line where the city would have to go, I think you'd have to have a referendum to be able to put that facility there, because you're past, I think, the line where you're able to, build, on the bluff, and so that would have to go in that direction. But it provides you the opportunity for putting a cafe up there, it's at that end of the bluff walk, so, it's that hub at the very end, and it have beautiful views, but that's something that's, we did conceptually in this, but it's not really kind of part of the overall, current plan. And then when you're inside the library, one of the key things, again, I think all of you know, libraries have changed, and we're doing a lot of renovations and remodelings to a lot of libraries now, because they were all, about 20 years, 25 years ago when a lot of libraries were built. And so coming in and really changing how your library functions, having that information desk sitting out amongst the public, that's really a key, not tucking off to the side. You want them there where they're accessible and can walk around and really work with people. And so coming in, you have this nice open feeling coming in. If you can see in the background, taking all the shelves down to a lower level. All the libraries we've been working with, they're all calling their libraries, their books in there, because if they're not being utilized, they're removing them. They have the current materials and stuff like that that's being used, but really reducing the shelving, and providing other opportunities in the library. And underneath the stair, this would be the new stair going up, providing an area for performances, whether it's someone doing a reading, book signing, maybe some poetry, or also maybe some musical instruments. The library actually does a lot of rental of musical instruments. I don't know if you know that, but that's a big thing in libraries nowadays, that people can come in and rent guitars or different things and use them. So this kind of gives you a nice social area where it's going to be quiet and studying, or you can have some quiet, reading or musical performance there. And it just provides that different type of space. And as you can see behind here, this is actually the space where you could be the art gallery, or it could be used for other functions too, and that's really the key. It's a multi-use space. It's not a permanent art gallery, but it's a space that could be utilized for those kind of functions. And then as you move into the library, really providing spaces where it's more collaboration. Along the wall here, this is what we're doing in a lot of libraries, making spaces where you put marker boards on the wall, you put group seating, so that if students go in there and work together, they can sit there in small groups and use the board, work together on lessons and just collaborate in those areas. So it's really developing those different kind of spaces in the library, for different uses, because today's, the students want to come in there and work together, and it's a great space for that. So just reorganizing and providing different types of spaces based on the current needs within the library. And then this is just a picture, a shot of what could happen up there at the rooftop level. You have, this is more for a little more formal setting, kind of a function, whether it's a, gathering, evening with, again, a social club or something like that. But you can see the glass over here. You have the ability to open this up and have those views and be able to go to the outside, on this level. And I think that's really key. It's a great space up there, but it really needs to be able to use it and use it often. It really needs to be air conditioned and have a roof over it and enclose the elements. So this is just, one of the options that you could use, for that space. And so that's kind of, the overall as far as what we looked at. Really the second, third, and fourth floor really only had the minor changes that we needed to get in there. It was really our mission was the first floor, how to really integrate that with the Imagine Clearwater and more accessibility, as well as the rooftop, how to really engage that, with the Imagine Clearwater plan. And when we were looking at this, we broke the budget up into, I think, 4 different areas. The first one was the first floor renovations, to go in there and redo the first floor, as we kind of proposed. It's about $1.9 million to go in there and to renovate. And we're not doing a lot of major structural stuff on that. I mean, it's just kind of changing up, putting that stairway in, but a lot of the things will stay, structurally the same in the majority of the library. The next area was the outside patio. We looked at that kind of a separate, because depending on what you want to do, how that goes in with Imagine Clearwater, that's a smaller number, about $136,000 to go in and redo the patio and open it up to the bluff walk and be part of the end of that and opening it up. The next area was on the east side. We were extending the wall out here, and this conference room would actually, this wall would go down and you'd actually have the glass, you'd see the glass going out. So again, you see more activity and more, with this space and opening it up here, and then having the entry would be over there, like where the elevator lobby is. And so it is make this a more accessible space. And it was around $400,000 to do that area. And then, the rooftop terrace, obviously it's the biggest one, because we're getting the circulation up there, doing the elevator, really enclosing that. And the budget for that is around $3.6 million to go up there. enclose that space, add the restroom, add the support spaces, as well as getting the vertical circulation up there. And so these are all numbers that, we put together based on the study we worked, with the library. And I guess with that, that was our task, is really to, work with the library, see how we could engage, make some changes to the library, really engage what's going on down here, and make it work well with Imagine Clearwater. And with that, I guess, open up to any questions, or to Jen.
Yeah, Mayor, I'd just like to conclude by saying I think the library enhancement project is a key component of the Imagine Clearwater Park redevelopment plan. We looked at it, I talked with Jen a little bit about, the phasing of this. If we did, I think Jen would tell you her number one priority is, not to speak for you, but is the rooftop area. But when you look at the overall size and scope of the project, it really probably is not in our best interest or the libraries to divide a project of this size up into multiple disruptions to the library. So our recommendation this morning to you is going to be to authorize us over the next couple of weeks to go back with Williamson DeCarr and negotiate a scope of work to do the plans, the permit drawings for this project and implement this project in one phase. It's probably the closest thing to permitting that we have at the moment. It'll take about 90 days to do the permit drawings. Then we'll submit those this fall for permit plan review. And then engineering has already indicated to me that they have the ability to manage this project. So in the interim, they'll be looking at how to approach getting a contractor on board and getting that phase of the project started. So the last comment on the restaurant, I think, a lot of us, including me, thought what a fabulous idea to have a full-blown restaurant incorporated into the library. That is very disruptive to the library. Commercial kitchens are very expensive. And I think that where the committee and the supporters of the library really did not favor that approach. So currently we have a good consensus on the kind of the approach that the library has recommending for the enhancement project. The grab-and-go cafe, the kind of casual cafe, wouldn't even in the future preclude us from selling, a beer or wine out there on the patio. So, and you've seen some of those kinds of things in public facilities and museums around. And I think the idea long-term for a complete restaurant site that stands on its own is a really attractive idea at such time as we are comfortable with asking our community to support that once plans for that kind of thing are more fully developed. So I think there's a good opportunity here, and we're going to ask you to let us proceed.
Okay. Questions? Mr. Albritton?
Okay, I've got a few.
Excuse me 1 second, though. Wasn't I right that this is more exciting than? Yeah, okay.
All right, I love it, because this is, and I have questions.
Okay.
I just wanted to say it's great. This is a big attractor for this area, and this is the first time I've seen it, and I love all of it. Questions I have, number one, the room we're in, is that still here? I mean, I tried to look at it. If you turn back to the first floor plan and point out where this is in that floor plan.
Yeah, this room, actually, we enhanced this room, and that's what we're doing. See, this room is actually right here right now.
That's what I thought.
And what we're doing is taking this wall out and expanding it out so that it actually gets bigger, and then you have the access, from the new lobby we have that actually goes upstairs or into this space, so it can be, utilized that way.
Okay, well,
I think it's important to point out you'd have access to this room after hours without access through the library. Is that true, Ted?
Yes, and that was really the key, that it could be utilized that way.
Okay.
But let me throw out, he also said that we're going to put glass walls there, so our meetings will be visible for people walking on the street now.
Okay.
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure that was
Yes.
the room I was looking at, because it's in the same configuration now, and, we're going to have to continue on meetings, so I'm sure that that's figured in there, how we're going to do that.
Yes.
The second thing that's real important to me with this bluff walk is connecting it to the trail. We're going to come down on this one side and then connect it back over here. So You said a couple of times that the end would be that little cafe kind of thing, and I want to make sure that that's designed where we can go through and then attach it back up to Drew Street and then the trail, if that's in the concept as well.
Yeah, the planning, no, that's important. And and that's the key, is to kind of see the whole thing. We haven't, I think that's been more developing, since we were kind of working on this, but yeah, absolutely. If it's going to continue on, you'd want to be able to pass through there and go on and not be kind of at the end.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Poglace?
Thank you. I think the summary that Mr. Delk, you gave about waiting on that restaurant, we need to be victims of our success. And I think right now, getting it past referendum would be a tough challenge. Let's do this right first time. The questions I have are a little bit more focused internally on what's going to take place here. And maybe Mr. Obermeyer can chime in too. Libraries nowadays aren't about all books. They're about computer workstations. They're about those multi-purpose settings where schools can have a virtual classroom. I didn't see, I know a lot of the books are going to go away and rooms, different floors are going to be repurposed. I didn't see an expansion of the internet cafe kind of setting. Will we be enhancing that as opposed to as many books as we have now? Because to me, that seems like a very popular thing within elementary, junior high schools, is to have that virtual cafe where anybody can come in and do stuff, conduct classes, events. Are we considering that in some area?
But what do you mean by a virtual cafe?
Well, I mean, a lot more computer stations as opposed to books.
Actually, the reality is our computer use is going down, and it's a national trend because people are bringing in their laptops and their devices and phones and using our wireless. So we're seeing a little
device.
We still have, computers for internet for all ages, but we're noticing a slight downward trend.
Well, let me rephrase the question. Are we reducing, or is there a need, a consideration to reduce the amount of books we have because of the electronic age, or is that not a reality yet?
Nationally, circulation in public libraries is going down. Whether people are reading more on their devices, ebooks, but we are seeing another trend that circulation is decreasing.
Well,
not drastically, but is decreasing.
And that's the reason I asked the question, because that was one of the primary considerations. We have this 96,000 square foot building. It needs to complement the Bluff and this whole Imagine Clearwater. And how do we take all this space and use it better? And so I thought reduction of books and then all these other things. And to me, I thought that internet thing was going to be
the trend in public libraries too is more collaborative spaces, and also furniture needs to be mobile, so it can be moved around for various functions. So we're seeing 10-person conference spaces or 4-person or 6-person. That seems to be we're seeing the community, seeing the library more as a collaboration hub. So that's why we added some conference rooms and study rooms.
And kind of a two-part question. How are we going to make the gallery more visible with all the glass? Is it going to now be just, you'll be able to see all the artwork from the outside?
No, actually, it's this area down here on the library, this area right here next to the entry. This is going to be the gallery. And so, again, it can be used for multi-purpose too. But when you're bringing exhibits, this is really the gallery space so that you really see it, when you're walking down, going up to the Bluff, walking Osceola, as well as coming into the library. It's that main space that everyone can see. So if you have a beautiful exhibit in there, people can wander in and out, in from the library and stuff like that. So it's making it right there where it comes in. But the key is it's not permanent exhibits, so that if someone want to have a meeting or kind of a function in that space, it's a great space to have that function in.
Great. And then the final question is, you had mentioned a museum type atmosphere component, and we do have some pretty interesting downtown history memorabilia. For instance, the bricks from the Capitol Theater that were discovered when the renovations took place. Is there going to be a dedicated museum space, and on which floor? And are we considering enhancing a downtown history kind of museum atmosphere somewhere?
Currently, our 4th floor is our historical, culture and historical floor. So we have the set of the bricks from the Capitol up there, and we have artifacts, and we have Clearwater Sun. We own the entire Clearwater Sun. So the 4th floor serves as a community memory and history, local history.
That's going to stay the same.
That's Correct.
And I thought of one more since I still have the floor. Is the northern set of stairs going to stay there? So they'll be south and north?
Yes, yeah, they will stay there, yes.
Okay. And we do have revenue to go and do this?
We do, and it won't keep you from doing the next thing you're going to want to do.
Okay. I'm
But,
finished. Thank you, Mayor.
Jay is here, the finance director, if you want to delve into that anymore, but we've met and discussed it.
I think I've allocated my time, but I'll let somebody else maybe have that question.
Before y'all leave, students, Mr. Pogle's just asked the key question, and that is, how do we pay for this? Okay? Tell your folks that, we appreciate their support.
It don't move.
Yeah. Were you finished?
That was it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Conduct, did you have some
I
questions?
just had a question about the rooftop. Thank you, sir. Are we doubling the space on the roof, or?
It's increased, I think it's not totally doubling, no. It's about almost half. It's not quite as half. but
Everything on the darker red side?
Yeah, which hash-in is all new, yes. It's like two more bays. The existing area is kind of, well, 2 bays plus you got the support area, so it's, yeah, another 2 bays.
And it will all be covered?
Yes.
Be covered on the walls as well as the ceiling?
Yes, yeah, because that's one of the problems they've had up there when they've had events, is if you try to do anything where you set the tables and you get that breeze blowing through there, it's hard to keep everything intact. And so, again, it could be opened up. I mean, we'd want a lot of the windows to slide and open up so that on a beautiful day, you could really enjoy the weather. But yeah, it would,
There will be two elevators,
yes.
but no stairs up.
No, there are stairs going up there. You have to go through the building. It's not a formal stair, so the elevator would really be the primary access up there.
All right. And I'm assuming that all the way around on the walls will be largely glass.
Well, on the east and west, yes.
Thank you.
Just to follow up on that, capacity-wise, you said about having groups meeting there. What would be the seating capacity?
Well, for tables, it's about, I think it's about 125, 150 for, a banquet kind of setting. Obviously, for more than that, you can get 200 or so in a different kind of seating, so it really depends on the seating. But, for an average size, setting for a banquet or.
Right, in service clubs like the
Yes.
Rotary that meets in other parts of the,
Yes.
not even in Clearwater.
Yes, exactly. That would be.
Right, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Let's go back to the financing a second. Where is this money now, and how are we going to get it? Because we're looking at approximately $5.5, $6 million.
Jay Ravens, Finance Director. Currently, you do not have enough funding in the Imagine Clearwater project for this project. There's approximately $4 million, I believe, currently of funding in the Imagine Clearwater project. It would require some type of internal financing, an advance. There is another $4 million of penny money targeted in fiscal 2020 for the Imagine Clearwater project. That will be January of 2020 when that money is available, essentially. We can advance money prior to that. Do want to point out this, when the previous price tag for Imagine Clearwater, we've heard different numbers, 55 million. This component was not included in those numbers. So this is an add-on. As other things will potentially be add-ons. So all of this is going to be cumulative. We have to keep everything in perspective going forward and prioritizing the different components of the project.
So you've answered a second question of mine, and that was on the 55 million. So what you're saying is that this project wasn't included in that 55?
That's what I've been told.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. But I think it was probably, and help me out here, when we started talking about the Imagine Clearwater plan, the improvements to the library were always considered part of the plan, and probably one of the first things that we could do to help revitalize this area.
It goes back to the original ULI panel report in 2014 that we enhanced the library, do more to increase the activation of it and to integrate it more successfully with the park and the waterfront. So this goes back to the beginning of the Imagine Clearwater project.
Well, Mr. Delk, thank you for working on this. I know you've been on this for just a couple of weeks, and we appreciate your, relighting the fire on this, because I think it is important for us to at least review these plans and decide as a collective body.
Mayor, if I may, one last, we have one council meeting in July.
Right.
So I want to try to make sure that we get a contract to get this work started for the permit drawings, at the next meeting, for you to make the decision you need to make there, so.
Okay, so Mr. Horn, I know that you want to say something, but let me double check. We have to have this on the agenda for Thursday night then, in order to give the approval that Mr. Delk is seeking?
The contract will come back at another meeting, so that's not for approval tonight. You can do a consensus for staff to authorize moving forward.
Okay.
To negotiate a contract, but the contract comes back in July. I believe that's what Mr. Delk just said.
Okay, Ms. Aiken is thinking.
I'm just wanting to make sure that you are okay with the contract being approved in July, or were you intending to get council to authorize that sooner?
Well, I don't have a contract in hand.
And you don't have an estimate in hand either, do you?
We have generalized estimates from the study.
For the construction, but not,
Those are the numbers that Mr. Williamson just went through a few moments ago.
Mr. Horn?
Yes, I'd just like to share a couple of things. If you go back to the time frame in which this current library was built, the council at the time, the community was really focused on addressing the trends that were popularly being discussed at the time, and the computers in the library was kind of the buzzword, at that time. And so we kind of responded to the trends. It's interesting when you think about 2004 and where we are now, how much there's been an evolution in thinking about how this library fits into the waterfront. And it is a much more inclusive sort of attitude that was reflected in the feasibility study in interacting with everyone. And but one of the things that we did not anticipate, and we're not anticipating in this feasibility study, is the impact of one of our greatest challenges, and that's the homeless. And so I would hope that we would, as we, not that anything needs to change, we just need to understand that the more we open this up and the more people have freedom to access, that unless we have some changes in our Constitution, we're not going to be able to then turn around and restrict people's access who we don't really want to be here. And when I say we don't want to be here, a lot of our patronage has been very reactive to our homeless guests. And so we have had to create rules and create barriers to help us manage this. And hopefully, I think the assumption is we'll have so much activity down here that we won't have that issue. But if you go back to history, that in spite of that, we still could have situations where we will have to manage this. So I just wanted to share that.
If I could just respond to, very good point. I totally agree that's an issue, but I go back to my time serving on the Homeless Leadership Board, and good activity replaces bad activity. It's proven over and over again. So the more you are able to draw the community to great spaces, because a lot of the homeless folks, from my history, they don't want to be all that activity. They're sensitive to all that visibility. Now, currently, because we don't have massive, great amounts of wonderful activity all the time consistently here, it becomes a destination, and they do choose to be here because it's great weather, great climate, great space. But I think if we're successful with what we're doing, I think it might not be as big a problem even as it is now. So that's my hope.
The vast majority, I think, are very law-abiding and
Right.
And fit into our facility and abide by rules. There are some that don't. And our public reacts to that, so that's the reason why.
And I think opening it up will help that visibility become, you can't hide, as we've seen on the west side as much. Did you have something else, Mr.
Yes, I wanted to ask on the little cafe that was even mentioned, I think, that was designed over the line and maybe a possible referendum on that. Is that true?
Yes. We've looked at that, and, frankly, I think it's a very attractive future. We just need to manage the timing.
Okay, is that something you're planning for a future, a referendum like within the next year?
No, I think right now the immediate priority is,
Interior.
is the enhancement project generally. The next thing, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes, is getting the RFP on the street and deciding on narrowing down Phase 1 construction of the park. So we're going to talk about those two things here momentarily. But so I think somewhere once we have those things on get them out of the station, if you will, and on a path to implementation, then we've got a little more time to decide, when, where, and how we want to go back to our community and ask them for some expanded authority on something like that restaurant. I think it has a great amount of potential. Be a fabulous way to anchor the north end of the bluff walk overlooking the park. But I think it's important to us that we show a vision of that to our community that is going to make them comfortable, and so I think it's a good opportunity for us to engage them, in terms of getting their support for doing that. I think it'd be a fabulous project. So, but I wouldn't expect us to, try to prioritize that to a march or, a referendum or anything like that. It will not be on that schedule.
Council, so are we comfortable with the presentation on the library enhancement project to go forward?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank y'all. Council, since our students had to leave, for the benefit of our staff who are waiting, we're going to be a while longer, right on.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Yes.
So why don't we go back to our regular agenda? I just felt like the students probably didn't want to hear about annexations and purchases of equipments and things like that. Agenda item 6.2.
Accept a 35-foot utility and drainage easement from Duke Energy Florida LLC for the construction, installation, and maintenance of city utilities and drainage on real property located in Duke Energy right-of-way west of Spectrum Field, and adopt the appropriate resolution. Mr. Burzak.
Hello, Robert Burzak, Real Estate Coordinator. The proposed easement will provide the city with property rights necessary for the construction, installation, and maintenance of city utilities and drainage within the easement that will support a new city transfer station and the Phillies Carpenter Complex at Spectrum Field. The City Engineering Department recommends acceptance of the easement. Questions?
Any questions on 6.2? It'll be on our agenda for Thursday night. 6.3.
Accept a utility easement from Bayside Apartments Owner LLC for the construction, installation, and maintenance of city utilities on real property located at 19337 US Highway 19 North, and adopt the appropriate resolution. Mr. Burzak again.
As a condition of the vacation ordinance 9277-19, the applicant was required to grant a defined replacement utility easement to the city. The City Engineering Department recommends acceptance of the easement. Questions?
Any questions on 6.3? No. On our agenda Thursday night, 6.4.
Declare surplus for the purpose of sale through invitation to bid, 41-19, certain real property located in the vicinity of Overbrook Avenue and Pinellas Trail. Said real property legally described as that tract of land west of Lot 67, Block G of Sunset Point, 2nd edition, and east of the railroad right-of-way, a subdivision according to the plat thereof, recorded in Plat Book 8, page 14, Public Records of Pinellas County, Florida, whereby the successful bidder will assemble this landlocked vacant lot with an adjacent property owned in fee title with an express prohibition against the parcel becoming an economic remainder. Mr. Burzak.
The city of Clearwater acquired this landlocked vacant lot via foreclosure in December of 2018. Two of the three property owners, adjacent property owners to the parcel, expressed interest in acquiring this piece of land to combine with their existing property. The irregular landlocked parcel of land runs along the east side of the Pinellas Trail. Current access to the parcel to a public street will require assemblies with adjacent owned lands. An independent appraisal was performed by Jim Millspaw and Associates and will determine the fair market value is $6,000. City staff support clearing the property surplus and recommend council's terms require the successful bidder of the landlocked parcel will be restricted to the adjacent owners and fee title.
Any questions on 6.4? This will be on our agenda for Thursday night. 6.5.
Approve a contract for the sale of surplus property owned by the city of Clearwater and located at 115 South Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue to the Clearwater Community Redevelopment Agency with a purchase price of $300,549.11 and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same. Mr. Brzezak. Yes.
The city finance director and the CRA director have mutually agreed to the purchase price, which will make the city whole as investment in the property. The CRA board approved the contract at May 13 CRA meeting, and CRA's intent is to assemble this parcel with CRA-owned parcel directly adjacent to the east for future downtown development. City management supports approval of the contract.
Any questions on 6.5? Mr. Poglaze.
So this is the action council has to take to approve what a different hat approved, because
Board already
I'm
approved
reading all
it.
this, and we did this already, but now I got it, thank you.
And this is the old there was a Brownsfield?
This is the old Clearwater Automotive.
Yeah,
warehouse.
warehouse. Okay, it's across the street from the NOLA.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, that property's been vacant for a long time. Consent?
Yep.
6.6.
Award a construction contract to Kelly Brothers, Inc. of Fort Myers, Florida, in the amount of $724,065.79 for the Mandalay pedestrian bridge replacement, and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same. Mr. Johnson.
Morning, Roger Johnson, Engineering. The Mandalay pedestrian bridge serves as a north-south connection under State Road 60, Cosmic Boulevard. That original bridge was constructed in 1998, and since we've done a lot of repairs and inspections on that specific bridge, we're asking to replace the structure with a more suitable material selection. Right now it's steel that's really close to salt water, and those two don't jive very well together, so we'd like to replace it with a more suitable material, being aluminum. So, questions?
Any questions on 6.6? Mr. Poglaze.
Thank you, Mayor. Is that bridge, so that bridge has two functions, not only pedestrian access for fishing, I see that takes place, but that also connects, it's a pass-through to get under 60 to cross over to the other side, correct? So that's why we really need it. Okay, thank you.
Consent? 6.7.
Approve a contract for the sale of surplus property owned by the city of Clearwater located at the southwest corner of Cleveland Street and South Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue, legally described as the north 282.5 feet of the east 50 feet of Block 5, according to the plat of Sarah McMullen's subdivision as recorded in Plat Book 1, page 41, public records of Pinellas County, together with all that part of the west 90 feet of the east 110 feet of the northwest 1/4 of the northwest 1/4 of Section 15, Township 29 South, Range 15 East, which lies between eastwardly projections of the north and south boundaries of the part of said Block 5, thus defined, less and except any road rights of way to the Clearwater Community Redevelopment Agency, with a purchase price of $364,782.89, and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same. Mr. Brzezak.
Robert Brzezak, Real Estate Coordinator. The City Finance Director and the CRA Director have mutually agreed to the purchase price, which will make the city whole to the investment in the property. The CRA Board approved the contract at the May 13 CRA meeting, and it's the CRA's intent to utilize the property for a public parking lot to support downtown development. City management supports the approval of the contract. Questions?
Any questions on 6.7? Consent? 6.8.
Approve a contract for the sale of surplus property owned by the city of Clearwater located at the southwest corner of Prospect Avenue and Park Street, legally described as Track 3 of the Platte Mediterranean Village in the park, as recorded in Plat Book 125, pages 44 through 46 of the Public Records of Pinellas County, Florida, to the Clearwater Community Redevelopment Agency with a purchase price of $260,000 and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same. Mr. Brzak again.
The CRA Board approved the contract at the May 13th CRA meeting, and the CRA's intent to issue a RFP to seek redevelopment opportunities for the site. City management supports approval of the contract.
Any questions on 6.8? Consent? 6.9.
Approve a 2-year extension of the parking consultant of record professional services agreements and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same.
Thank you, Mr. Horn. Good morning, Mayor and Council. Tara Kivett, Engineering Assistant Director. This is a renewal of our 3 current parking consultants for a 2-year term through end of July 2021. This cycle will now be staggered 2 years from our engineer of record efforts and be in line with our architect of record efforts. Any questions?
Questions on 6.9? Consent? Mr. Conduct, did you have a question?
I guess I have a question. I'm kind of embarrassed to ask this, but the last parking study that we had done was woefully poor. And are these the same folks that did that study?
It is the same engineering firm. Yes, it is.
And we have a confidence that this was a one-time mistake, that they're not going to do every time?
Well, our plan would be, yes, before we issued future work orders with Kimley Horn, that they demonstrated a higher level of competence before we move forward.
Can I respond to that?
Mr. Horn.
First of all, that report information was in draft. It was not a completed published report, which suggests that we brought that report to you prematurely. It's not uncommon for drafts to require some tweaks. This one didn't get the full level of tweaks. So I wouldn't necessarily hold Kimley Horn completely responsible for us bringing you information that had not been thoroughly scrubbed.
Good question, Mr. Conduct. Don't be embarrassed to ask. Consent? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Albrecht.
Well, I have a question. My copy did not say draft, it said final report. Usually when I get drafts, they have draft written on it. So I was never told it was a draft, and that I know that originally when it came through, there was some work to be done on it, but then when it was given to us, I thought it was fixed.
That was my understanding. So, I mean, I could have been misled, but
Council, I think it's important to note that Mr. Horn has admitted that a mistake had been made, and, they'll be more careful.
Well, whose job is it to scrub it out? Is it Kimley Horn or was staff? I mean, whose job is it to finalize it to make sure it's done?
well, I mean, usually there's a level of review that we apply to it. And, I mean, consultants don't always necessarily, in the phases of preparation, they don't necessarily always hit the mark that we think they should hit. And so part of the review process is to make sure that at least from our perspective, that they do. Still doesn't mean you all will agree with it, it's just.
And not to, I think what happened is that, I understood that it was a draft. I think what happened is that in the rush to get it out, it was probably put out, without being thoroughly reviewed, because we were pushing to get this study out. And, so I think there's, I think we've learned from this lesson, and we'll be very careful in the future. Consent? 6.10.
Approve a 2-year extension of architect of record professional services agreements and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same.
Thank you, Mr. Horn. Tara Kivett again. This is a renewal of our current 7 architect of record firms for a 2-year extension through June 2021. Any questions?
Questions for staff on agenda item 6.10? Mr. Poglaze.
I'm very familiar with Fowler and Associates. Do we plan on using them for any of this Imagine Clearwater as our engineer of record?
Well, right
I
now,
mean,
we
I know
have,
we have contracts with other folks to do this. For instance, library, I mean,
it depends on how we break up the different phases that Mr. Delks mentioned, but right now we have working on a draft work order with Stan Tech, who will be the lead design firm for Imagine Clearwater.
Explain exactly what this means, though. It means that you don't have to come back to us each.
True. So this architect of record, same with the parking and engineer of record, is a continuing services contract. And per statute, we can only pick these firms for projects that have a construction value less than $2 million or a study with fees less than $200,000. So hence, for our larger projects, we do a project-specific RFQ seeking out design firms. Like we just did for Fire Station 46 at the beach, we did that for the gas complex, and of course for Imagine Clearwater.
mostly in-house stuff. So if there was a component of the library thing, we didn't have a contract.
So it would have to be a much smaller, so maybe one of the phases of the library renovation, we would pick one of these architect firms to do that. But the construction value would have to be under $2 million.
Thank you.
Consent? 611.
Approve the new four-year engineer of record professional services agreements as listed and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same.
Thank you, Mr. Horn. Again, Tara Kivett. This is the culmination of the city's process to procure new engineer of record list with 43 firms, including 16 new firms, to provide engineering services to the city in support of capital improvement projects, master plans, rehabilitation, renovation projects, and studies. Any questions?
Questions for staff on 6.11? Consent? 7.1.
Amend the Clearwater Code of Ordinances, Section 2.453 miscellaneous provisions, adding subsection G, missing benefit recipients relating to the Clearwater Firefighter Supplemental Pension and Retirement Plan, and pass the appropriate ordinance on first reading. Chief Ellers.
Good morning, Mayor, Council. Scott Ellis, Fire Chief, Clearwater Fire Rescue. This item before you is to amend the ordinance of the City of Clearwater's Firefighter Supplemental Trust Fund. This request is to add language regarding the missing benefits recipients. There was a similar request in Ordinance 9278-19 recently submitted regarding the Police Officer Supplemental Pension Trust Fund. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions on 7.1? No. It'll be on our agenda Thursday night. 7.2.
Approve a contract for purchase of real property located at 601 South Hercules Avenue by the City of Clearwater of certain real property owned by Hercules Avenue Church of Christ at Clearwater, Inc., with a purchase price of $700,000 and total expenditures not to exceed $705,300. Authorize the appropriate officials to execute same together with all other instruments required to effect closing. Chief Ellers.
Again, Scott Ellers, Fire Chief, Clearwater Fire Rescue. The request is for your approval to purchase the real property located at 601 South Hercules Avenue with a purchase price of $700,000 and a total expenditure not to exceed $705,300. This property was provided to the city for consideration from the owners for purchase, and Clearwater Fire Rescue has been looking for property in that area for several years now to relocate to Fire Station 47, which is currently located at Highland and Lakeview. So we looked at this for a potential site. This location provides good coverage for the communities it serves, but also provides easy access to the major north-south and east-west corridors to facilitate support of the other Clearwater communities. Additionally, it provides almost an acre and a half of land to allow plenty of room for 4 base stations similar to the Fire Station 51 in the Greenwood area, as well as 49 over on Sky Harbor area. This allows for a modern fire station amenities as well as relocation of the city's single squad, putting it into a more central location. An appraisal was completed as per city policy and submitted with your packet for consideration. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for staff on agenda item 7.2? Mr. Condon.
Could you talk about the your interaction with the neighbors surrounding it and how they felt about it?
Yes, sir. Thank you. And since we have met, we I have met with all the business, just about all the businesses in that little shopping area that has the Allstate and that type of component in there, as well as the individual who lives right on the back side of this actual piece of property in that residential lane, Canterbury Lane. None of them had any negative comments. They were all receptive to the idea that we were putting a fire station at that location.
And the high school?
In the high school, we've met with the principal, and actually we're meeting them again Wednesday. We're going to meet with the high school, who's very happy that we're going to be right in that area as well. In addition, I had met with Neighborhoods Day with the Imperial Oaks community, which is just to the south of that location, and they were receptive as well at Neighborhoods Day. Now, we didn't know all the stuff we know now, but we've been trying to hit all those areas around there.
Any other questions, Council? Chief, reiterate to remind us of how long we've been working on this and where some of the other sites that we had looked at that we had turned down in the past.
Yes, sir. I know I've been working on it since taking over as chief 3 years ago, and Chief Weiss was working on it prior to that. So it's been several years now that we've been working on trying to find a viable location that's large enough to accommodate for a fire station. We have looked at sites just outside the city limits in the county that the neighborhood really didn't like that in that area. Then we had looked at some additional sites at Keene and Gulf to Bay. There was property there. The owners of those didn't want to sell it to the city. They wanted us to lease from them. We also looked at some sites right next to the school, which we had been ongoing with the school, where the adult educational aspect of it, right? There are tourists in Gulf to Bay. And then there's a flooding issue there, and several other properties around there. The problem that starts to occur in that is trying to get access to go north, south, east, and west. And FDOT has not been amenable a lot of times where we could punch out through that median, rightfully so. So it just adds to the travel time of them trying to get around. This location provides a very, very easy access for what we call run-in streets or major corridors to the north, south, and east and west.
And talk to us about the response times that are necessary for us to maintain our ratings if we go too far away from where the current location is.
Correct. Yeah. The response times that we have for contract, which should be actually coming up this year as we start with the county, and that's a 7.5 minute total response time. That means from the time that the caller dials 911 till our truck shows up on site. We need to have a 90 percentile, so 90 or 9 out of 10 times we need to be at that response component. A component of that is the travel time. That's from the time the truck leaves the apparatus floor and meanders down to wherever that call comes in. That time there is that we look at about 5 minutes to do that. And we worked with the county. They have a program through the 911 center that allows that to where you can take a station and put it on a piece of property to see how it'll impact and keep that 5 minute travel time to where it does not exceed that. And in this case, this one sort of puts it in a real good spot where it doesn't exceed that 5 minute travel time for the communities it serves.
In keeping it or rebuilding the station at its current location is not an option, because why?
Because it's when we moved Station 45 out of the downtown area and moved it further east, what it does is started encroaching on 47s, and the overlap was tremendous. So we knew we had some areas that were pushing towards the east and south that we needed to try and cover a little bit better. So that gave us opportunity to be able to push that far over. The current site is Station 47 right now. It was built in 1974. It's gotten to a component where it's costing more to keep it up and running as opposed to getting a new station. So with that, the overlap and the ability to move to a little bit further east, it provides us a bigger area than the location that it is right now.
And then when we finish with, when the new station would get built, what would we do with that property, Mr. Horn? Would that be up for sale, or do we have any use for it?
It would be surplus.
Yeah, okay.
At least our perspective right now would be surplus to city.
Okay. Consent,
One more question, if I may. And we have money budgeted for this already?
That is correct. There's been, this project has been sitting in CIP for several years now as a component. Just haven't been able to find the land for it.
Consent?
Yep.
8.1.
Amend the Clearwater Community Development Code, Section 5-1002, changing the composition of the Public Art and Design Board to include a representative from the Clearwater Arts Alliance, Inc., and Creative Pinellas, and pass the appropriate ordinance on first reading. We have Chris Hubbard. He is back with us as our Cultural Affairs Manager.
Good morning. Good to see all of you. This is just an update to change the representative organization. The Pinellas County Arts Council no longer exists. Creative Pinellas is the new county-designated local arts agency. So it's an amendment to reflect that change.
Any questions?
Yeah.
Mr. Condon?
My question is just grammar. Is this one representative?
One representative.
Can one representative also, it looks like you're saying a representative from Clearwater Arts Alliance and Creative Pinellas.
There's a
That's two
representative on the
organizations.
board from the Arts Alliance. This is a separate, another representative from Creative Pinellas. So there are two, one representing our city, one representing the county.
Shouldn't it read then, include representatives from Clearwater Arts Alliance and Creative Pinellas?
I would have to look into that. Yes. As far as the language, I'm just presenting it today, so I would need to look at it myself.
And maybe the ordinance itself is more clear than the,
Well, it's, help me out, Ms. Aiken. The composition, the Public Art and Design Board shall consist of 7 members. 1 member of the Clearwater Arts Alliance, 1 Creative Pinellas member
Yes.
or designee, 1 landscape architect, 1 architect, 1 urban planner or related professional, 1 active professional artist, and 3 private citizens. So there is 1 from the Arts Alliance and 1 from Creative Pinellas. Okay.
it was just in the description that was a little bit misleading.
Okay. So this will be on our agenda Thursday night.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
8.2.
Approve the annexation, initial future land use map designation of residential low, RL, and initial zoning atlas designation of low medium density residential LMDR district for 3040 Terrace View Lane, and pass the appropriate ordinances on first reading. Mr. Brother.
Thank you, Kyle Brotherton, Planning and Development. So this voluntary annexation petition involves 1 parcel of land totaling 0.197 acres, which is occupied by a single-family home. The applicant has requested annexation in order to receive sanitary sewer service as part of the K-Pop Terrace Sewer Extension Project. The applicant has paid the required impact fee in full and has been connected to the city's sewer main. And solid waste will also be provided upon annexation.
Any questions on 8.2? It'll be on our, Mr. Condon.
I had a question about the Arts Alliance.
Well, you'll have to ask it then on Thursday.
All right.
Okay. Any questions on 8.2? 8.3.
Provide direction on the proposed development agreement between East Shore International Enterprises, LLC, and 411 ES, the property owner, and the City of Clearwater, providing for the allocation of 8 units from the Hotel Density Reserve under Beach by Design, and confirm a second public hearing in City Council chambers before City Council on July 18th, 2019 at 6 p.m. or as soon thereafter as may be heard. Mr. Perry.
Mark Perry, Planning and Development. This proposal will call for the demolishment of all the structures on the site. It's 1.115 acres, and a 6-floor hotel with 74 hotel units, which equates to 66.367 units per acre, along with a 57-slip marina facility that will consist of 22 slips available to the public and 35 slips available only to guests of the hotel. The complement of hotel units includes 55 units that are permitted as a matter of right, 8 units which are being requested from the reserve, and the applicant plans to request a transfer of development rights through a level 2 flexible development application at a later date for an 11 additional units. The building will be 65 feet in height, and that's measured from base flood elevation to the roof structure. So it does utilize some of the height bonus that's available for projects in the Old Florida Character District of Beach by Design. It's for properties that total at least 1 acre that are located on both sides of East Shore and that provide a publicly accessible boardwalk. There's actually 4 parcels that make up the entire site. 3 of them are on the east side of East Shore Drive, and 1 is on the west side of East Shore Drive. All 4 parcels will be required to be joined together through a unity of title and also through a lot combination request form through the property appraiser. The parcel on the west side of East Shore Drive, that will only contain a 43-space surface parking lot. So on the east side of East Shore, that will be where the hotel is and the marina and additional parking. The ground floor of the building will include bike racks, solid waste components, storage space, and an additional 57 parking spaces. Again, a publicly accessible boardwalk is proposed along the entire east side of the site, and there will be a walkway on the south side of the site that will provide access from East Shore Drive to that boardwalk. The development agreement includes some specific language that addresses the inclusion of that boardwalk. Let's see. I wanted to make a note that because some of the slips will be available for renting or leasing by the general public, that means that there's 2 uses on the site, a marina facility and overnight accommodations. The development agreement also includes some specific language that limits the specific activities which may take place on the site with regard to those slips that will be available to the general public. Specifically, activities such as servicing, fueling, pumping out, commercial chartering, and or dry storage of boats and boating equipment are going to be strictly prohibited, and that those marina slips shall be limited to sale and or lease to privately owned boats rather than commercial vessels for hire. With regard to consistency with the Community Development Code, the property, lot width, and area are all consistent. Right now, the conceptual site plan shows setbacks that are consistent with the Community Development Code, as well as height. And again, that height is contingent on the provision of a publicly accessible boardwalk. The applicant is also providing a shaded seating area, more on the land side, but adjacent and connecting to that boardwalk as an additional public amenity. The requirements for off-street parking are being met. 100 spaces are required, and that meets the 1.2 spaces per hotel unit for the hotel component, and the 1 space per 2 slips for the marina facility component. With regard to landscaping, a formal landscape plan has not been submitted at this time, but adequate space is available. With regard to consistency with Beach by Design, it's consistent with the Marina District, and earlier I misspoke. I said it was Old Florida. I meant Marina District. The conceptual site plan and conceptual elevations appear to be consistent with the requirements of the Beach by Design guidelines. And the proposal is also consistent with those requirements that have to be met prior to the allocation of units from the reserve. A development agreement, of course, is included with their packet, and it provides for the allocation of 8 units from the hotel density reserve, which, by the way, would bring the current number of available units down to 0. And it includes the usual and customary language addressing timeframes and milestones for applying for permits and things like that. It does include some specific language dealing with the boardwalk, dealing with the marina facility component, which is those slips available for sale or lease to the general public. If there are any questions, I'd like to try to answer them.
Questions on agenda item 8.3? Mr. Albritton?
Yeah, this came to us before, right? Is this the hotel that changed cabanas to?
No, that was 443 East Shore, and that's further to the north.
That's further to the north,
A
okay.
totally different site. I'm not aware of this one, this
So
property.
this one has the boardwalk. Is that going to connect into the pavilion, the?
Papaya Street?
Yes.
I don't think that this goes up far enough to connect, but
Trying to look at the,
But access is going to be important from both north and south. Public
Frenchie's
will
owns some of the
have
property to the north.
Right.
Along East Shore up towards Papaya.
oh, is Papaya further north?
This is a southern section of the boardwalk area.
yeah, this is really closer towards the causeway side of East Shore Drive. But they do provide a publicly accessible walkway on the south side of the site that will be dedicated for access from East Shore Drive to the boardwalk.
Yeah, because East Shore is very difficult for pedestrians. They're always walking in the street.
They're proposing sidewalks on both sides of East Shore, at least along their portion of the property.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Mr. Condon?
It looks to me like their planning is at a parking garage or a parking lot across the street from the
Parking lot, it's a surface parking lot.
surface.
On the west.
No more than one story. I mean, it's.
Oh, no, it's surface, it's
Surface, okay.
asphalt parking lot. It's not structural.
No, thank you.
Meeting space?
No, I mean, this is really a limited service hotel. They have some offices that are pretty small. I think it's for their own use. Yeah,
But
this
they're
is,
going to have a lobby, they're going to have a lobby and an attendant on duty 24 hours a day?
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And there's no plans, there are no plans to make it like a condo hotel?
As far as ownership, I have no idea. I've had a feeling that it's going to be under one owner. They're still looking for a flag, as I understand it. So no, nobody said anything about breaking the units up into individual ownership or anything like that.
Go ahead.
No.
Have we had any, feedback from the community, the neighborhood area on this proposal?
I have not received one phone call or email or anything.
Okay. And from a traffic impact, it's just going to be off the causeway onto East Shore, and you're basically right there.
You're right there, and they have adequate space, throat depth and all that. It's been reviewed by our traffic engineers.
Okay. Unless there are any other questions, that will be on our agenda then for Thursday night.
Thank you.
8.4.
Authorize an agreement between the City of Clearwater and Forward Pinellas to receive a Complete Streets Concept Planning Grant in the amount of $50,000 to prepare a Complete Streets Concept Plan for Fort Harrison Avenue from Bel Air Road to the merge at Myrtle Avenue, alternate US 19. Authorize the appropriate officials to execute same and adopt the appropriate resolution. Mr. Hartman.
Hey, good morning, Mayor, Council. This is a Forward Pinellas grant that the city was awarded, $50,000. It's for the project Fort Harrison Complete Streets Project. And it's to look at the street that is our primary north-south downtown connector and seeing how we can modify it to make it serve all people, all users, cars included, going all the way from the South Gateway area, serving Morton Plant Activity Center, downtown, imagine Clearwater, and connecting to the North Marina area and the Seminole Boat Launch area that is undergoing redevelopment. The provision of the $50,000, the city will also provide $25,000 of cash and then also $25,000 in in-kind services. The project is will be completed by, the concept plans will be completed by June 30th, 2020. And so we're asking for your approval of this agreement to send forward Pinellas.
Questions for staff on 8.4? No questions? No. Actually, I think this is important for us to look at, and I wish this were the first, complete streets program that we had on Fort Harrison. But I want to go back in time a little bit, because originally alternate 19 was South Fort Harrison, and we moved it to Myrtle. And the idea was, then we made Fort Harrison 3 lanes, or narrowed it to 2 lanes from the 4 in hopes of getting traffic to Myrtle. But that really hasn't worked all that well. You still see lots of traffic on Fort Harrison. So when we do this complete street, then we're going to end up probably, or hopefully, with some of that traffic moving onto Myrtle. Is that a fair statement or question to ask?
Well, hopefully it'll be the truth, because that is one of the primary reasons the South Gateway, I call it South Gateway area, is that there seems to be this disconnect from moving over to Myrtle with the way the street is currently designed, as well as wayfinding and branding. So we've pointed that out to the consultant we hope to sign on to this as an emphasis area to actually improve those conditions, not only traffic flow through and to destinations on Fort Harrison, but also to try to shift through traffic over onto Myrtle to continue through the city. So what you say is one of the primary functions of this plan, we hope.
Okay. And as we do that, would we please look at synchronizing the lights, the north-south lights on Myrtle? Because I'm thinking that, a lot of times you end up getting stopped one red light after another as you're going north or south on Myrtle, and that defeats the whole purpose of trying to get the traffic to.
That's a great point. We'll include, of course, traffic operations work closely on this plan with us to achieve those goals.
This will be on our agenda then for Thursday night. 8.5.
Approve the complete streets for Clearwater implementation plan for the city of Clearwater and adopt the appropriate resolution.
Good morning, Mayor, Council again, Rick Hartman, and we are here with the Complete Streets for Clearwater implementation plan. It's been a while in the making, but we really think that we've come up with a great plan to create a citywide program for but implementing complete streets as a fundamental part of infrastructure project review. Jared Schneider from Kimley Horn, who's worked with us closely for quite a while now, and will be providing a presentation on this, but we're asking you that you approve the plan today, or move it forward to Thursday for approval. So I'll turn it over to Jared at this point to go through the plan itself.
Thank you, Rick. Hi, everyone. How are you doing this morning? On a Monday morning, right? Yeah, this is, as Rick mentioned, really been in the making for a little while. What I want to talk a little bit about today is reiterate kind of the reasons why we did the plan, and then also go through the actions of the final plan today. So I like to show this quote. Streets for the last century have been designed to keep traffic moving, but not to support the life alongside it. Traffic is a key point of transportation through our city here, and will continue to be, but I also like to say that it's 25 or 35% of all the real estate in the city is made up of streets, so it's one of our most important assets. So that's why I like this quote. So the plan's all about safe streets, and that's actual and perceived comfort, and we'll get a little bit into more of the safety. It's also about mobility. How do we get people around the city for using all modes? And then it's also the economic benefit of complete streets. So we'll get into that a little bit more, as well as the equity piece. The equity piece is really key as far as, citizens in the city, only 11 there's 11% that do not own a vehicle. And that does not include the number of citizens or households that only own one vehicle. As I mentioned, the public space is key. Typically 25 to 35% of cities are made up of streets. I mean, think about that. That's a lot of space. It's a lot of real estate. And you guys have really done a good job talking about Imagine Clearwater. Parks are also a huge aspect. So how do we tie into our park space? We talked a little bit about this in April. This plan really talks about the different needs of all citizens. So not every single street should look and feel the same. So we'll get a little bit more into that. So again, why are we doing this? Really, Tampa Bay has made great strides. We've really been working with our partners, and I really have to give your staff kudos, Rick and Lauren and others. We've gone from being 3 or 4 on this Dangerous by Design report that's put out by Smart Growth America to number 9. Now, I don't know about y'all, but I don't like being ranked. Usually it's a good thing to be ranked in the top 10, but this is not one thing we want to be ranked in. So we're making great strides, but this is something we want to continue to work on. Another great thing that this plan does, it's consistent with what DOT's been doing, and DOT, to their credit, has come up with what's called a context classification guidelines, and that looks at, as you look at cities and communities, whether you're in the downtown or suburban or rural area, they shouldn't all be designed the same. So the Florida Design Manual is now, that's been around for the last 2 years, looks at this land use context when roads are designed. So this plan is consistent with that. Now, also local agencies, our local agencies have been adopting complete street plan policies. City of St. Petersburg just adopted theirs earlier this year. Pinellas County, Tampa, and Hillsborough County all have other efforts. Smart Growth America also comes up with a list of complete street policy or plans. There's 1,400 or over 1,400 around the country. We pulled this list. This is the top 20 metro areas in the state of Florida, and almost all of them have either complete street plans or policies. So this is consistent with that list. Again, I can't say enough the safety aspect. We had 52 people in the last 5 years lose their lives for various reasons. Over 450 suffered life-altering injuries, and that does not include the family members or friends of these individuals. That has a huge economic impact. This is a map that you all have seen from last time, just highlighting some of the hotspot issues that you're aware of. It's State Road 60, Drew Street, US 19, Belcher are some of the ones that rise to the top. You saw this last time in April. These are the guiding principles, what I think is the kind of the guideposts that we'll be using. And this plan talks about measurable criteria to continue to look at these guiding principles. We talked about safety, and it's really about providing options for people to come here, people that live here, work here, and that want to come here to make this a safe and beautiful environment. Social equity piece we talked a little bit about. Not everyone owns a vehicle, but it's still important to continue to make sure our traffic flows. The community context sensitivity, again, that's a big one. Planning for land uses, make sure that we have the right street and the right land use. Technology, again, is key. I think we talked about traffic signals, real-time traffic data. Those are all important and will continue to be important into the future. So now I'm going to go into what we call the flexible street design. I've hit on it again. The street characteristics should really be looking at the surrounding land uses. So I took this picture looking west to downtown. So areas in downtown and the beaches may not look like they do in the neighborhoods when we're designing streets. And what we talked about is kind of a 4-step method. We look at the street type. Is it a State Road 60 or a Drew or a Belcher versus a neighborhood street? They're all different, and the land uses are different. So, and then we also have to look at all the great planning and infrastructure that's already been done in the area, and that all those kind of lead to the street design. And what we've done is we've taken the city and developed different land use context classifications that break up the city. So you've got the downtown core, we call the urban edge, the urban residential, suburban areas. And then again, we have different street types. We have thoroughfares like State Road 60, local collectors, and local community connectors. And what all this means is, we've got our street here. Not every street has these elements. We've got kind of three main realms that we have: the pedestrian realm, the curb and gutter, and then the traveled way. And the traveled way could have all sorts of different things. We're looking at moving cars, we're moving buses, trucks. Freight is huge. But in different, there's different land use contexts and street types. That's where we're trying to create flexibility. You could have different sidewalk widths or lane widths. This is just an example of an urban edge area, and what we've created in this plan are general planning guidelines. These are not engineering standards, but it allows flexibility. And the importance of this is this really helps as you have development. They can kind of see what is your intent in certain areas of the city. I know I've talked to some of my land development folks that I work with, and they like, it's certainty is money for them. So they like to see what's going to be expected of them. So this shows kind of the sidewalk widths, bicycle recommendations, and that's something you all hit on early last time we were here. And this really talks about on certain roadway types like a State Road 60, maybe we don't want bikes on the street. I know I don't want them on the streets, so we're talking about separated or parallel facilities, whereas you may have something like a Cleveland where that's okay to have them on street. Also gets into different transit, and then travel speed, or target speed, operational speed is key, and I'll get into that here. So this is really the big thing that DOT is looking at, is trying to align our posted speed with how fast people drive. I know, most of us don't typically drive what the posted speed is. I hate to say that, but that's the truth. And then on top of that, roadways were designed for 5-10 miles per hour faster than what's posted out there. So you feel that it's comfortable to drive over the speed limit. So we're trying to align all those things together, where the posted speed is how you feel you should be driving. And why that's key is you look at 20 mile per hour, for 20 mile per hour, 18% of pedestrians have either been killed or injured seriously, whereas if you go to 40 miles per hour, that's 77% of all pedestrians hit, or it's either a fatality or a serious injury. So now I'm going to walk through just a few examples. Again, we talked about Drew and a lot of different complete streets projects around the Tampa Bay area being road diets or lane reductions. This is one example that was done in Tampa, and I just want to say that's just, again, one of many different complete street project types. But the reason this one is shown is it's been done from a safety aspect that we just talked about for the speeds. And again, on the speeds, we're kind of really trying to look at reducing speed, but that doesn't mean reducing the travel flow or the travel time progression. So this next one is one that's looked at throughout the country, La Jolla Boulevard in San Diego. The importance of this is the traffic capacity remained the same. And you guys hit on this pretty well last time. Really, a lane reduction mixed in with smaller neighborhood roundabouts really does a lot. So the capacity stayed the same, the travel time was reduced, traffic crashes decreased by 90%, and more importantly, retail sales increased by 35%. You have people slowing down and looking at, hey, maybe there's some local businesses I should go check out here instead of driving through quickly. And the operating speeds dropped from 40, 45 to 20 miles per hour. But yet the travel time still stayed the same because of those neighborhood traffic circles. Again, I can't say it enough that that's just one component of the menu or what's in our toolbox. This is an example of one that we've looked at where you're increasing lighting at the intersection, you're providing a sidewalk and a crossing for this gentleman, where right now today he has what's I call the cow path there. This one you saw last time, but I really like showing it because there's examples like this in Clearwater and all over the country, where on the left we have just a lot of pavement out there, and with some changes we can start to, one from a safety aspect, tee that intersection up, which reduces the crossing distance, but it also allows more space for our business community over here. Maybe that's something where they can include more parking, or it's a cafe in the right context. Now I'm going to move into the actions for implementation. This is really the key piece of the plan. We've got 4 boxes, if you will, and 25 actions that we feel like the city could start now. And really we've started to put them in short, mid, long-term kind of timeframes. So I'm going to walk through each one of these 4 now. Policy and regulatory improvements. This is really, we talked a little bit about this, but adopting a complete street policy we felt could be a quick win. Developing a complete street checklist. So that's something as staff is looking at projects from private developers or internally, they can look at a checklist to run through. Updates to community development code and comp plans. That's something where right now we have our design matrices that we showed, but until you put it into your community development code, it's really just a guideline. And then eventually engineering standards and updating a bike ped master plan. Project delivery process. This is how we really talked about how the departments can continue to work together and leverage projects from an interdepartmental review process. If it's a stormwater project, is there an opportunity to do something else like sidewalk improvements or crossing enhancements? It's not always the case, but at least it's an option. And then I'm not going to go through all these, but really developing an annual 5-year project priority list we felt is key. Capital improvements projects. I like this slide because we're showing, is there a possibility of temporary pop-up or demonstration projects that lead to quick build projects? So a lot of this doesn't have to be expensive capital projects. It's putting paint out there, trying it out, really seeing what, getting the community on board and implementing some of these projects. And then we felt pursue dedicated additional funding for complete streets is also another recommendation. And then special area mobility studies, what we felt there is this is kind of the framework, but then going street by street is the next step and really starting to think through here's the specific look and recommendations on each corridor. Measuring and evaluating performance. We talked about the guiding principles, but really we want to lay out the guiding principles and the measures to really start to look at where are we today and then where are we going. This is continually looking at not just the whole City of Clearwater transportation network, but as we have projects, how effective were they? That's really about it. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Okay. We're going to take a 6-minute recess until 11:10, and we'll reconvene then.
Sounds great.
Okay.
Thanks.
No big deal. Because I was sitting there.
It's all right, it's good, right?
is.
But I'll look at it.
Yeah, I was looking at it while we were talking.
I'd like to reconvene our work session for June the 17th, agenda item 8.5, and we're at the questions. Council? No, Mr. Pope?
One question, comment question. I'm glad to see we're finally at this point for a policy and implementation. I'm glad to see we've sort of compromised to make sure that our first project is going to be successful. I was happy with the presentation to see that it can be integrated in other work projects as we go forward, that this not necessarily is going to be a great big budget item. The question is, could we assume that this project and its success be a template for the project that we know needs to be done eventually? We'll kind of create best practices with this Fort Harrison project and figure out how we're going to do Drew Street, which really is a problem. Is that a correct assumption?
Jared, if I may.
Yeah, go.
Yeah, we're excited about this as far as having a toolkit and templates with guidance to provide with our consultants and with staff also working toward Fort Harrison and other projects as well. So that's one of the things with the checklist also, when somebody has a utility, stormwater, a resurfacing project, we can look at this, but we'll also provide it to our consultant on the Fort Harrison project saying, look, this is what the city, these are the guidelines, let's see how we can work to improve the streets.
So the follow-up question would be, all the information that was gathered from the public input and community meetings and stakeholders for the Drew is not lost. It's just kind of a placeholder right now. Because there was a lot of community meetings and input and figured out what might be able to be done. So that project is not dead, just dormant for right now.
No, that project is moving forward, actually. We're working with FDOT in the county and moving forward traffic operations and engineering concepts. So that is progressing as we envision toward engineering designs of the concepts and hiring a consultant. And what we learned on Drew Street and what we will learn on Fort Harrison, because we have different contexts, of course, and different issues, but there's a lot of crossover information, as you said. And part of the implementation plan was the survey that we did citywide, and we got a lot of input.
Around 1,000.
Yeah, somewhere well over 900 participants and a couple hundred comments, so we're not losing any of that. You know, that's really what's helping guide this whole plan.
I like where you're going. It's not lost because really DOT's looked at the Drew Street concept plan and they haven't come up with a specific plan yet, but they're looking at advancing or making Drew Street more of a priority now because of that plan. And also, I think it's been great with how you won the Fort Harrison grant. Now you have a citywide plan that you have other partners. When grant applications come up, they know something's there.
Great, good, thank you, that's good news. Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Albritton?
Yeah, I think it's great to have a toolkit that we can pull from for everyone, because I've never been really for one size fits all on just about everything. But my question is, I mean, this could be used as a template to figure how micro-mobility fits into all this as well. Is that correct?
Yes. You know, when we look at micromobility and we're looking at, well, what kind of facilities do we want them on? Where will they be served best to meet our different goals that a micromobility plan has? This plays into that quite well. You know, making that shift from just bicycles into motorized slow vehicles that micromobility represent. So yes, sir.
Thank you.
Just kind of.
Do I understand correctly that this system is not a cookie cutter, it's not really even a template that's going to be applied all over the place, but that you're looking at every block of every street differently because of the width of the street, the width of the right-of-ways? Am I right in understanding that?
You're exactly right, and that's where that map comes into play. You can kind of see where you are within the city, what street type, and then there's flexibility built in. even then, you mentioned right-of-way, that's really the constraining factor a lot of times. But it allows you to understand kind of the intent of what we're trying to do. In certain areas, we may want wider sidewalks. If we say 10 or 12-foot sidewalks, we may not have the right-of-way to do that. But it's really kind of telling the intent.
If I could ask one more question. The other area of interest was, and we kind of jumped over that slide pretty quickly, but you said that there were some places that could be done almost immediately with some streets to improve the intersections. And are those something we should seriously consider, on a short-term basis to improve not just our traffic flow, but the safety at the intersections? Would that be would you say a critical?
I agree. I think you're doing some things already. Fort Harrison's been mentioned. I think there's some traffic, there's areas with traffic problems, Drew Street again. But there's intersections throughout the city, and we got some of that feedback from some of the public outreach too.
Yeah, if I may follow up too, as in Drew Street, we're looking at not only here's these concepts for different segments and different land use contexts along that street, which is always important to look at as well as the right-of-way, but we are looking at what can we do in a more short-term basis. Is it widening or completing sidewalks? Is it restriping intersection crossings? So these are some of the things that both FDOT, the county, and the city are looking at. What can we do instead of waiting for the whole cake?
Thank you.
Council, each time we have this presentation, the mayor gets criticized because he's not he hasn't bought into complete streets. But the appearance is that he's against safety. And, time and time again, you couch this as a safety issue. And let it be known that the mayor wants safe streets. He doesn't necessarily buy into complete streets because I'm not sure that we consider the impact the complete street plan has on neighborhood streets, abutting streets. Mr. Hartman, I think you told me when we had our one-on-one that this plan is going to consider the impacts what we do on Fort Harrison will have on adjacent streets, what we do on Drew Street will have on adjacent streets. No matter what the street, we will look at the impacts it will have on adjacent streets.
Yes, Mayor, we will definitely look at how design impacts redistribution of vehicles, motorized, cars, trucks as well. One of the things that was brought out about complete streets is for everybody, and that sure as heck includes people who drive. The other thing is the facet of the La Jolla Boulevard, Bird Rock area that you saw, the lane elimination was the capacity. We'll always look at capacity. And when you look at capacity, you have to look at what happens to adjacent streets as well. They help move traffic, but you don't want to really, shift your problems to those kinds of streets. But it also talks about traffic flow, the signalization, use of roundabouts, things of this sort, where slower traffic but can move more smoothly and actually as quickly, and sometimes as it happened in La Jolla, they have same capacity, moving more, their travel time is faster as well. Those are all important considerations that are included in the plan.
Any other questions, council? We will have this on our agenda for Thursday night.
Thank you very much.
Agenda item 9.1.
Approve the joint participation agreement, G 1941, between the City of Clearwater and the State of Florida Department of Transportation, FDOT. Authorize a $15,000 transfer from Airport Fund reserves. Authorize the appropriate officials to execute same and adopt Resolution 19-12.
Ed Chesney, Marine and Aviation. This was an opportunity that came to the airport during our master plan process. We've been working with FDOT and our consultant AECom on our master plan update to take us to the future. Security upgrades was always part of that original plan. During those discussions, we're taking advantage of some of the surplus money this year in the DOT's budget. So their fiscal year ends June 30th, so they saw an opportunity to give the air park some needed security money before the year ran out. So if this is approved on Thursday, we'll get it to the DOT and take advantage of that opportunity to really enhance the after-hours security access to the air park.
Questions for staff? And we can't put this on consent. I'm sure we would like to, but we need to pass the resolution. So we'll see you Thursday.
Okay, thank you.
Agenda item 10.1.
Approve purchase orders to Rexel in the amount of $95,100.69. Instrument Specialties, Inc. in the amount of $6,385. And Gray Bar in the amount of $9,665.69 for the Water Treatment Plant 1 Programmable Logic Controller Upgrades Project, and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same. Mr. Porter.
Good morning, David Porter, Public Utilities Director. I'm here this morning to ask you to authorize the purchase, as outlined by Mr. Horn a moment ago. These purchases will allow us to complete a PLC, or Programmable Logic Controller upgrade, at our reverse osmosis #1 water treatment plant. We're replacing PLCs, or those little controllers that control each portion of the facility that have become outdated, no longer can get parts, with new units. That's the purpose.
Questions on
I'll be glad to answer.
10.1? Consent? 11.1.
Thank you.
Approve the 2019 Affordable Housing Inventory List pursuant to requirements of Chapter 166.0451 Florida statutes, and adopt Resolution 19-10. Mr. Lane.
Thank you. Chuck Lane, Economic Development and Housing Department. We are required by the state of Florida to produce a list every 3 years of city-owned properties that may be available for use as affordable housing. We coordinated with the Real Estate Services Coordinator to look at our land holdings, and we identified 19 properties. The resolution you have in your packet says there's 20. We've removed one. You'll have an updated resolution in your packet on Thursday. Some of these lots are contiguous, and they may be assembled, so we really have a total of 13 sites. The previous list contained 9 sites. The increase is due to our recent foreclosure activity. All the lots are vacant land. Most are single-family lots located within our neighborhood revitalization strategy areas. There are 4 sites that may be suitable for small-scale multifamily projects. We currently have developer interest in a handful of these sites. Over the next few council meetings, I hope to present opportunities to transfer some of these properties for development of affordable housing. Questions, please.
Any questions on 11.1? Mr. Poglaze.
Kind of a question. Would it be possible to have an overlay map to show where we can look up ourselves, but it would be great to have a big map to go, okay, yeah, that would be great for affordable, you know what I mean? Just to really pinpoint addresses. Is that too difficult to do?
I can have that for Thursday.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Kunda.
Thank you. Are any of these properties suited, and that would include zoning suitability for what is called tiny homes, smaller residences where you could put more than one on a piece of property?
There are some multifamily sites, as I said. I think with our single-family sites, I think that's a challenge right now. I'm not sure our zoning allows for that at this time. We do have some larger sites that are available for some higher densities, which it could be possible.
I think that's true right now. I know Gina wants to come in on that, but we would want to have a tiny home ordinance on the books in terms of how to deal with that, I think.
This will be on our agenda Thursday night.
Sure.
12.1, just call.
Reappoint Michael Mack and Edward T. O'Brien Jr. to the Marine Advisory Board with terms to expire May 31st, 2023. Council members, these are the individuals that we have in that are available to be reappointed, one and the only individual, so no other applications are on file currently.
Questions? Consent?
Yes.
12.2.
Appoint one member to the Parks and Recreation Board with terms to expire May 31st, 2023. Council members, Lisa Tuttle was serving on the board and had resigned. And so we currently have applications that were provided to you for Patrick Rafferty and Meg Taylor for your consideration.
Wait, say that again, she resigned?
Yes.
Because the thing says that
Oh,
she's...
I'm sorry, her term had expired, but she is interested in reappointment, but I'm not really sure why. I'll have to double check on that, because normally if she's available for reappointment, we just go ahead and reappoint, so I'm not really sure why we have 2 applications presented. I'll double check for Thursday.
Okay, so why don't we hold this one off until Thursday? Because she's in her first term?
Yes.
Yeah. Is that all right, Council?
Yeah.
Okay. 12.3.
Appoint Camille Heptig to the Neighborhood and Affordable Housing Advisory Board as a citizen who represents employers within the city of Clearwater to fill the remainder of an unexpired term through September 30, 2021. Council member, she is the only applicant we have on file that can fill this representative qualification.
Consent?
Yes.
12.4.
Review city council rules. During the April 1st work session, council directed staff to provide some language that would implement a scheduled rotation of the office of vice mayor. So what I have provided is some language that would be for the rule number 5, duties of vice mayor in absence of mayor. And the additional language would state the following. The office of vice mayor shall be rotated amongst the council members annually in the following order commencing 2020. Seat 4, Seat 5, Seat 2, Seat 3. And obviously, the role of vice mayor, the office would only be taken for 1 year, and that would change at April of each year.
Questions? Does this go on consent, or do we have to have?
No, there's a resolution, so I'll present a resolution on Thursday if it's okay with council.
Does the new resolution, does the new language leave room for a vacancy, as happened last year? There was a vacancy halfway through the year.
No, not as currently drafted, but I think at that point, because if at that point you would have to address it, I think, as a council, only because the schedule really addresses the issue of making sure that whoever's serving as vice mayor is not in an election year. And so if the person decides to, and the next rotation, the natural rotation, they would be in an election year, council may want to address that individual on a case-by-case basis.
All right, so we'll have this on our agenda for Thursday. 13.1 is a second reading. Any questions on the second readings? Okay, we will continue now back with 14.1. And council and staff, thank you for accommodating my request and giving the students an opportunity to hear something that I thought was probably a little bit more.
Agreed.
Mayor, Council, Michael Delk, Interim Assistant City Manager. Kind of picking up where we left off. Before a little bit of unfinished business here, or kind of during the break, Finance Department indicated to me that the original request for proposals for the library was done through our architect of record process, and therefore we will have to go through an advertised solicitation for the architectural work to do the permit drawings. So there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, certainly using the architect of record for that, but what it does mean that we have not, don't have a basis of a competitive bid on the library service. So we'll have to competitively bid this project, given that it's over a $2 million project. So that is what it is. Dealing with purchasing consistent with state statute is not a debatable item, so I'll proceed accordingly. What it means probably is that I will not have a contract for services back to you in July. It'll probably be, what I'm going to shoot for is August, and we'll push on that date. So at any rate, that is what it is. We want to go back now, and the next item on our discussion was going to be the Memorial Causeway. This is really more of an update to you than anything. We had obtained a quote of work with Lee Royal Beasley to assist us in the permitting of the Memorial Causeway Bridge. Now, her services are going to be actually acquired through Stantec, our existing contract for services on the Imagine Clearwater, since this bridge has been a part of our project from the beginning, part of the Imagine Clearwater program or concept. Lee spent a career at DOT District 7 in Tampa, so she's very familiar with the people and the processes over there. What she is going to do for Stantec and us is to evaluate comparable bridge lighting designs and evaluate those, look at the various technologies that people are bringing to bear to, in that regard. One thing I'll say is that the lighting that we have there now, we can actually change the gels, but you have to physically go out there and change them. I think also, given the design of the lighting, it's uplighting on the bridge, so we want to be a little bit cognizant of how that, any changes in that lighting would impact some of the nearby properties, Pierce 100, some of the other residential properties there. So what I will be asking and looking for her to do is to more fully vet and evaluate the lighting options, and it may be bathing the bridge in downlighting, for example, to minimize some of those impacts. But those are the things that she'll do for us over probably about the next 60 days or so, and then is going to assist us with regard to approaching DOT as the asset owner of this property, this facility, in terms of getting something that we can permit. So when that starts to come together a little bit more, we'll be able to talk to you maybe about some of the various technologies and options, and then certainly the big important question then is what the cost of that will be. But unless you direct otherwise, I consider the the lighting of the Memorial Causeway Bridge to be one of my short-term immediate priorities. I believe that there's probably a few things we could do down here that would have more of an iconic impact than lighting of that bridge. It'll really be a signature for us as a community, and I believe it's kind of the kinds of things that ends up on postcards all around the world when you have that kind of a spectacular waterfront amenity. So that's the Memorial Causeway.
Wait,
Yes, Mayor.
Let's make sure we don't have any questions, because I know I've got one or two.
Okay.
Any questions, council?
No, mine were covered at the 101s, thank you.
Okay. Help me understand, she's not going to give us a plan for the lights. She's just going to do all the preliminary, and then we're going to have to go back out
At some point, we will hire a lighting contractor to
Okay, so.
do business with, to install the lighting and program it and do, we'll
But
have
she's not going to give us that. That's going to be somebody
No.
else?
We will develop a plan for how we approach and get permitted the lighting, but at some point, we will have to go contract with a lighting company to give us a more specific proposal on the lighting of the bridge.
Okay. Were you following up, Mr. Horn?
Well, yeah, it sounds like, this is, she is going to help us sort out what we're doing, and then we'll contract with a
What we can do,
lighting company to
right.
actually do it.
What we can do, what we can get permitted,
Yeah.
that sort of thing,
Okay.
yes.
Does that apply, because I had received a question from an individual regarding the lighting on the same key bridge. Do we have the same restraints on the same key bridge that we would have on the Memorial Causeway? Because that's not DOT, right? The same key bridge is ours. Yeah. Council, I don't know about y'all, but sometimes I think that the same key bridge is more visible from other parts of the city than the Memorial Causeway. And I'm just wondering whether we can combine, whether it's even worth combining the two to light up both bridges in an iconic way.
My focus is Imagine Clearwater.
No, I understand. I understand that. But since we're not at that point, I thought I would throw that out now so that while she's looking at these things, she might be able to at least tell us, is that possible, is that feasible, is it something that we ought to consider?
Well, I was thinking one thing we could do, not to distract him from
Yeah.
what he's doing, but we do have other staff members
Okay.
that can take a look at the same.
But I was just thinking, if you do it all at the one
Well,
time, it would be.
But they
more-
can,
Yeah,
but they can do the
Okay.
scope work and then let him
Okay.
know how it might connect. Does that make sense? I think it makes sense to you.
Well, your comments have, I've got another question now. so-
oh, well, just wait your turn.
Oh, no, you asked earlier. You asked earlier, and I didn't have one, but now this next line of questioning.
Yeah,
Okay.
so, and the reason I bring that up is when you're sometimes driving, from North County, you see the same Key Bridge, you don't necessarily see the Memorial Causeway Bridge.
If you're on it, you can't see it.
No, and I'm not on it, I'm driving
No, I
from,
know.
just for that, I'm gonna go to Mr. Conduct next.
What I hear missing in the discussion is the lighting designer. Who is going to design the lighting for it? Contractor only follows whatever the designer.
Well, we started out with a really more of an artistic kind of approach to the lighting. I think, and I've talked to Chris, now that he's back on board with us, about maybe re-engaging in that process. He had done some work on this, I think, a few years ago. So, we're not going to forget about the artistic component of this bridge by any means, but we're going to make sure, we're going to try to figure out a way to get the ball over the line. And I think right now we've kind of been struggling with that. It's for various reasons. FDOT is not, they're not always the easiest with their the assets that they manage. So we've kind of, we want to get our ducks in a row, so to speak, and then we're going to we'll pay close attention to the artistic nature of the bridge. I mean, that's why we're doing it. Ultimately, is to create a sense of place for downtown. That's what the project is all about. And then we'll have to have I think we can probably take a look at maybe a more convenient technology in this day and age, where we don't have to send people out there to change gels on the fixtures. So that's something I'd like to try to avoid.
Mr. Albert?
Yes. So just to clarify, this is a consultant that's going to be brought on, as it's stated here, that will tell us what technologies and comparable lighting projects have done, and will they supply us conceptuals of what that looks like, or are they just going to say, here it is?
Well,
I mean, what do you think for the 14.4?
Yeah.
What kind of,
I would expect in this case, it's more a matter of technology options and some analysis of how bridges have been successfully lighted. To go to an actual lighting scheme, implementation is going to be a lot more expensive than this. This is a fairly, but I think the big thing that I want to gain from this in terms of why I am asking that we do it is to help us in terms of our interactions and permitting process with DOT, is to make sure that what we end up proposing to do, we can be successful in permitting it. And so I think with her experience for a career spin in District 7, that she can be helpful to us in that regard.
Mr. Poglaze?
He just answered it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr.
Yeah, I
Maxwell?
just wanted to clarify that, Mr. Delk is bringing this forward as a concept that he intends to include in the work order, which you will still have a chance to approve at a later date. So the Stantec work order will include the work in this that's being presented to you today. I think he's looking to see if the concept is one that you were interested in, but the detail will come in that work order.
Then I want to put Ms. Call on the spot. Can't we just ask our state legislators to go to DOT and say, hey, the city of Clearwater wants to light the bridge, make it happen, so that
We
they
can
don't
do
have
that.
to, so that we don't have to spend $14,000 to do it?
We can do that, but I think the manager said at the last meeting, we want to pick our battles carefully and maybe try this route, the approval process route first before we approach the legislators, and then put them in a predicament that, because there are other projects that we want to work with DOT, so I don't know if we want to go there just yet.
Okay. Okay.
if I may.
Nicely done.
One more.
Secondo.
If it's, do we not need a wow factor on this like we do with the rest of Imagine Clearwater? And in the designing of that light, whether it's holographic light shows from the bridge or anything else that might be new technology, I think, don't you think it would be well worth it?
Maybe Roy Orbison playing on the support.
Or Jim Morrison?
We have a local connection with it'll be a spectacular, we're not going to go through this exercise and not have a spectacular, that's just not going to happen. So, it's not a matter of just throwing up something. One is it'll be far too expensive just to throw up anyway. So these things will not be cheap, as is anything with this and other major public projects. But, the whole reason for doing this is to kind of pin a rose, if you will, on downtown as a signature place that people will drive to just to take. I mean, this will be that kind of a destination point. So we'll have an artistic flair to it. I think it'll be driven in large part by the technology and the approach that we choose to take once we get, some technical professionals involved in the final design lighting of that. And then we'll, my thought is it'd be real easy to overcomplicate this and make it try to be something that it doesn't really need to be. So given a choice of what I would bring and recommend to you at some point maybe is, I could do 40 lights on our pool lighting at home. I don't think we need 40 iterations of programmable lights on the bridge. I think we need to do a handful of things very, very well with it, and we will get every nickel's worth of value out of this bridge. So I would look for something that is efficient and as simple as we can make it for maintenance and other reasons and expense, but that still delivers a statement about downtown and the bridge and the waterfront. So that's philosophically, that is what what I would hope that we can bring you. Adaptive reuse, just a quick update on that. We have a proposal in hand, very pleased with that. I don't have the specifics of that in front of you yet. I need to follow up with the architect of record. This is Wanamaker Jensen. They've done a lot of work in the city in the past. I think they're doing some work for the city now on one of the fire stations. It's what I believe to be a very competitive approach. It's for an estimate of services for the old fire station. We talked about this. The old fire station, the city hall, and the North Ward School site. I think I think our economic development folks and the CRA has been getting some interest on the fire station, so we may have more of a conversation about that when we meet again in July. So we may or may not move forward with this adaptive reuse for the fire station, but we certainly will complete that component of it for the City Hall and the North Ward School. So that's just a quick update on that. And if there are any questions, we're going to continue. Park phasing, I want to show you this. Our engineering folks have been working with Stantec and so we've had a conversation about this. I wanted to show you what this looks like. I think what we're trying right now to do is to work with Stantec and the engineering approach. We're getting ready to go into the 85%, and you can see what I'm asking them to take a look at, and our engineering folks are working on in terms of a phase one and a phase two. We basically, this scenario would build virtually everything in the park with the exception of retaining a place to hold Clearwater Jazz Festival next year. So, if things could improve, I mean, I certainly would be open to some further amendment of that, but, you know, right now, that's what I'm hoping that we can focus on delivering in the first phase. Now, as you notice there, C-band shell phasing program, the consultant which provided us a drawing for this on Friday didn't get the drawing quite right, so I won't, I'll just suffice it to say that the band shell area that's outlined right there would be phase one ultimately with the actual staging, which is what we've all come to expect in terms of the staging. 40 by 60, 2 20-foot wings, I mean the full stage structure. And then a back of house is a phase two, and then the covered seating is as a phase three of that. What we want them to do, what we've asked them to do, is to have the engineering side of this equation move full speed ahead. And as we have talked individually this past week, what I want to do is to pull out the architecture and the urban design component of this Stantec work and let us focus with them much more directly in terms of what the architectural and urban design components are for every structure in the park. We don't need you in the weeds on this, but we have to be in the weeds on this, and we really haven't gone over all of those structures and how we want to tie them together. The park should have a consistent, notable theme between all the structures, I believe. I think the architect, in having met with him last week, feels they're a little closer to being done with this exercise than I think we really are or should be at this level. So a couple of things this will allow us to do over the next 2 or 3 months here, the summertime, if you will, is to look at clearly the design of the stage and the covering over the stage, all the back of house, the architectural look of that, any covered seating that we incorporate into the project and how that integrates with the other overall facility, as well as some of the other smaller structures in the park, and then notably the canopy covering over the plaza entryway. Now, what I want to tell you, make sure emphasize is that the plaza entryway is a part of the initial phase one. There's no reason for that not to be included in that phase one of it's just the structure of the canopy. Because theoretically a plaza doesn't have to have a canopy at all. So, you know, we're gonna take the next few months and make sure that we get that, get a good common theme and design for that. And I also want to work with the folks in Water's Edge to try to mitigate their concerns over the bridge and the canopy as well. I think we can, we'll at least take a shot at that. And there's some design criteria that we can, or some design options that I think we can look at. So any questions on where we're trying to get to with the phasing?
Okay. All right. Mr. Albert.
So again, what's the timetable on the phasing to get this together?
Well, my hope is that we're working on what they call the schematics. The consultant told us that last week that they think the schematics phase getting to 85% would take about 2 months, 60 days. I'm not sure if we think they're being too optimistic about that or not. I don't know. But regardless, we're going to take the next 60 days or period of time here to be posting requests for a construction manager at risk, so that we can get them on board about in the same time that we get an 85% construction drawings. And then what we'll do is work with them on those construction drawings and decide where with them, where and how we can move the individual phase one construction forward in the most timely manner. So an actual construction manager may have some good ideas for us on how to do that, and so we want to get them on board quickly as possible. Tim, is that fairly accurate?
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Pogley.
Thank you, Mayor. You had mentioned in phase one, the band shell itself is going to, and you had mentioned also Jazz Holiday. So could you clarify that?
Yeah, in phase one would not necessarily include the structural components. That I want to take a separate look at. That's what we're talking about doing, is to get a final design, urban design, and the whole park. We want that to be a kind of a unified theme in the park. So I think the easiest part of that to move forward would be the stage as a phase one of that venue, simply because there's, once we've settled on the architecture and that, I mean, we're going to have the footprint. We're going to build a footprint regardless, right? So we're going to have a place to put whatever we, phase or stage we want to build it in down there. But I think clearly looking at the stage as phase one can help move that component forward sooner rather than later, so.
Thank you.
But it may not, I'm going to look at that all together. Just make sure you understand the phase one, the objective here is to build the kind of the green space openness infrastructure of the park and the plaza and all that as part of the phase one. Is that clear? I don't want to have you misunderstand that.
We could build the stage, but either way, there's going to be a green space in phase one because we've already decided on the elevation.
Yes.
That will be acceptable for where that stage is going to be, so there will be somewhere to do something.
The stage in and of itself is going to be, should be a grand facility, right? So that, that ought to have its own, that'll be an iconic structure, or should be, I mean, for what we're going to spend in the park. And, this facility, like I think the 50, 60 is not part of that cost as well, originally, all of it. So we intend to have, and we should have, for this investment, an iconic structure in the band, in the staging, and the covering of the staging. It'll be covered, so it'll be everything that we need in a first-class kind of staging facility. So the urban design, the look and the feel of that, and the ability to relate that to the rest of the park is what we're going to take a look at.
I thought Mr. Pogles was going to go one step further, so I will. Because you mentioned Jazz Holiday. Do you envision there being a year where the current pavilion would not be available to Jazz Holiday and the new pavilion stage would not be available either?
We're trying to avoid that.
Okay.
I think that's our intention from the beginning, and it's one of the reasons why the phase 1 and 2 that I showed you on the map is drawn the way it is.
So to
To keep the north end of the park remain settled.
With my one-on-ones and what he just said, now I was comfortable, but I'm glad you asked the question.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't ask that question. Yeah. So, okay. Very good. Okay.
Our objective's not changed.
Okay. Is that it?
I've included this in park phasing. It's really the, I could have pulled it out a separate item, but regardless, it's the RFP. We've talked to you about this. We want to get going on the request for proposals immediately. We can't really have an RFP on the street soon enough, particularly if there's any thought at this point, which I know we've talked about, is trying to be prepared potentially for a March referendum. Like we've discussed, we may or may not, want to make a decision that the more appropriate venue for that election may be August, but nevertheless, we'd certainly like to have our documents and our ducks in a row at the earliest possible moment. So setting that conversation aside for a moment, I think to move this project forward quickly, we'd like to re-engage HR&A for a couple of, actually several things, but some of the most important ones are right now our economic analysis on the Bluff properties is between probably literally 3 years old. They were probably doing that work 3 years ago in preparation for their initial Imagine Clearwater plan. So those numbers at this point really need to be updated, the economics and the analysis of it. They're going to provide us support to launch and management of the solicitation, evaluation, and negotiation with development communities. They will collaborate with our architectural firm that we will also have to acquire the services of to design the massing of buildings and forms for desired uses. I think one of the things that I want to emphasize here is that nobody will reflect our vision necessarily better than we can at this point. So I think we need to be very, very clear to the development community that we're going to solicit in terms of what we're trying to accomplish with the park. We've talked about that. This is not a small ticket item. This will cost us some dollars out of our existing funds, but I think it's money well spent in order to help us focus our this phase of this project HR&A will help us develop a cash flow model to evaluate financial feasibility, assist us in the creation of a pro forma to show project feasibility and assess the financial gaps involved therein. There's no little question, I think, that we're not going to be asked to participate in closing some of those gaps on this project. Actual development of the RFP documents, and quite importantly, assist in identifying targeted distribution lists for the RFP. We have not been terribly successful acquiring the interest of the kinds of developers who really need to work are in an urban environment, and so we need to try to be able to capture those folks who are familiar with and comfortable in working in an environmental in an urban setting. So I'll stop on that. I think, I've had a lot of conversations with the city attorney. We both are of the opinion that these services can be very valuable to us. And just in terms of our concern about speed, they will help us get an RFP on the street sooner than I think if we try to take our own shot at dealing with this. And this is one where HR&A kind of does this thing for a living, and they're very, very good at it. And just so you know, the Imagine Clearwater project was competitively bid in the beginning, so we can, given the basis of the work they've already done, I've talked with finance, we're perfectly free to engage these folks to build the next step on top of what we have in the Imagine Clearwater. So I'll be happy to answer any questions you have about that phase.
Mr. Albritton.
So Thursday, you're going to be asking us to make a motion to go forward with
Yes,
this?
sir. I have a scope in hand from them. I've got a few things that I want to talk to Pam about in the next day or two, as well as some questions of Carrie Herstein in New York. But I do plan on having that. If you give us direction, support today to do that, then I'll have it before you on Thursday, so we can get going.
Okay. Very good.
Last thing, very quick, I want to tell you what I intend to do in the next meeting. This will be, I guess, our July. I really want to have an opportunity with you on a big picture kind of second century Clearwater discussion, and pull together a lot of the things that we have done and continue to do with regard to this project from one end of downtown to the other. There's a lot of things going on, and I think it would be good for us to really kind of pull all of those things together so that we can, I think we need to be aware of really the focus. I think it'll help us to become focused and stay focused on what our objectives are with a lot of projects that you have in front of you now, including in the budget that you'll be adopting soon. So I want to kind of pull all those things together with you and have a little more of a conversation about second century Clearwater and how we're going to pull all these things together. So for brevity, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Mr. Delk. Speaking of the budget, Mr. Horn, are we going to have a special budget meeting to discuss the budget before you present it to us, or because it's going to come to us July the 1st, right?
First meeting in July, not the first.
The 17th.
17th.
Yeah, 17th. Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll need one after that?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I thought you had to present something to us on July the 1st.
July 17th, we have to present
Yeah.
the preliminary millage rate.
Yeah, you set the millage.
Right, okay. On the 17th, yeah, okay. All right, do you have anything else further for us, Mr. Horn? Ms. Aiken?
No, sir.
All right, thanks, everybody, and we will see you on Thursday at 6 o'clock, that is June the 20th. We're adjourned.